Lurch and Greg Pullman, your board members, some of your board members from Eclectic Endeavors, the group that puts on the Gaming Arts Media Entertainment Expo, the Picnic in the Universe, Game Time at the Creamery, Game Time at the Holdfast Brewing Company, and other various gaming and nerd related things throughout Springfield and the surrounding Ozark area. I'm Doc, or Clyde Starr. I am the director of cross promotions. My job is to go out there and just kind of forward us through other like gaming conventions and related shows to get the word out. Below me, in the middle, you'll see Greg Pullman. He is our director of tabletop gaming. He handles board and card games, role-playing games there at the conventions. One of our biggest areas when we actually do the physical convention. So if you're a D&D nut like Pathfinder, want to play some Warhammer 40K, things like that, he's the guy that you would go to get yourself a table assigned and play. And we do 75 to 100 or more scheduled games throughout a weekend, so it's a lot of fun. And then below him, we've got Lurch, or Philip Landergan, who is our chairman this year, and also, except for year one, has been the electronic gaming director every year of game. And he has, of course, one of the biggest collections of console games I think I've ever seen, both consoles themselves and game cartridges, disc cartridges and whatever. So if there's a game out there that's console related, he probably knows at least a little bit about it. So he's our expert on everything electronic, not to mention being an IT professional himself. And we talk about anything and everything involving the nerdosphere. Now we're going to have a kind of a really busy show this week. Don't have a lot of side topics, but there was a whole bunch in our media focus this week. So we're going to dive right in right after I do a sound check and open up the chat window. So let me bring up the sound check window. Check 1 2, check 1 2 window. Check 1 2, check 1 2 window.
Check 1 2.
Check 1 2, check 1 2 window.
Check 1 2.
Check 1 2. Okay, we got our nice chorus going on there. And then let me bring up, like I said, our chat pop-up window real quick so I can monitor chat, see if anybody comes in to say hi and interact with us, and also get my monitor going on the phone. All right, and we're ready to go. We're going to dive right in here. Let's see. Let me bring up this window. And first off on our agenda, we're going to go ahead and start with Lurch, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Final Fantasy XIV.
Okay. So this is just kind of a weird story. Final Fantasy XIV has exploded in popularity recently and sold so much that the digital version, the digital download version that you buy online, sold out.
And
Which
of course,
isn't
they would
What's
limit
that?
They would limit the digital version so as not to overwhelm the servers, I would assume.
Yeah. That's like the only thing like that makes sense is, well, either overloading the servers or using up all their current
Download
pre-prepared
bandwidth.
license keys,
You're right.
something like that. And so I don't think I have ever heard of a digital version selling out, and they were starting to like roll out more availability to it quickly, as quick as they could.
Yeah, because technically
yeah,
you wouldn't run out of a digital because it's just another copy. Another copy.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, like when the physical copies sell out, you get it. Walmart, GameStop, Best Buy, they didn't have enough discs in stock.
Right.
But when you're downloading it from a digital store, you think of it as just, I'm just downloading digital code. It's a copy of a copy. You can't run out of that. But
most you think is you might
but
have to sit
especially
in a queue or something waiting for your turn to download.
yeah. But they hit a point where if you went in to try to purchase it, you would get a message saying that they were out of stock. Which I can't imagine being someone shopping, trying to buy the game at that time and being told you can't download it because it's out of stock.
Yeah, like
But
you said, it's either because of server saturation or because the actual producer of Final Fantasy that sub-licenses it to the various digital downloads only gives them so many intellectual licenses, and once they get
yeah,
it out, they have to get a new batch of licenses uh, sent to them.
yeah,
That can only be the only two answers I can think of, unless they're trying
right,
to slow it down in preparation for coming out with a new MMO and wanting to kind of slowly phase this one out. That's the only other one
yeah.
I can think
And
of.
it actually, in fact, they have a huge expansion that's coming out soon. That is probably in part of why people are getting into it now.
Right.
And so, I'm looking forward. I think they call the Endwalker expansion. I haven't yet. I haven't yet reached that. I haven't gotten far enough in the story to be able to do anything with the Endwalker stuff. Really, it is a huge game. I'm a few hundred hours into it, but I haven't gotten far enough to get to the Endwalker content.
Yeah, and I
So
barely started.
I'll definitely, yeah. But yeah, I just thought this was a fun little thing, something you never hear of. I know of online sales running out like that. It's just funny. I'm not sure. Like, it's a good game. I love it. I don't know what made it suddenly spike up in popularity in the last week or so. I mean, I get like more like people returning to it, but it sounds like these are new purchases, like new
Well,
sales of the game.
yeah, that would have to be if they're running out of them, because
Yeah,
if you've already purchased it and you're just re-downloading something you've already got, they couldn't say they're out of
yeah,
something you've already purchased.
yeah.
Uh,
My thinking is maybe there's something to do with because they did recently have a very generous. I don't know if it's still inactive anymore, but how I got started, they had a very generous trial campaign where you had over 100 hours worth of content for free. Um,
right.
I got a little over 60 hours in before I was decided, okay, I like this enough. I'm going to go ahead and pay for it so I can have everything. But there was still plenty more to do before I would have to have paid for it. So, and I'm wondering if that got a lot of people like interested, and then they decided maybe to not actually buy into the full version until now. And
Yeah.
and now that we got the Endwalker coming close, maybe more people are buying into it. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know what the psychology is behind the sudden surge, but it's it's just it made me laugh. Well, first when I first heard the news, I was like, "How?"
Right. Well, and there's a story for you, boys and girls. This is our drug dealer. See, they give us a taste and then make
Yeah.
us pay for it. That's how it is. Hey, the first taste is free, then it has a fee.
Yeah.
And we are like,
Ooh.
give us the.
Oh boy.
I need a hit. I need a hit. Okay. All right. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting and a little bit enigmatic topic to talk about. This is so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to follow and see where that goes. Um, okay,
I'm glad the game's doing well. They've crossed over 22 million concurrent subscribers.
right.
So, they're doing real well. What happened to our
It was
what happened to our
my mouse fell off of my mouse pad, and that
oh
that went and caused all my windows to shut down. And if the windows are minimized, then it doesn't
yeah,
show on my streamer.
yeah.
So I had to just reopen them real quick.
Let's see.
Yep, it was a whoopsie. All right, well, we're going to go on to our next subject. Now, this is Greg's only real topic for this week, but here we go. He was talking about this, and we've got a couple different pages here for it. You want to go ahead with this, Greg?
Yep. One of the most beloved and critically acclaimed animated series in recent history is getting an official licensed RPG adaptation. There have been other third-party attempts at it, unofficial ones, but Magpie Games, who are the people behind Masks, A New Generation, Epilion, Urban Shadows, Cartel, have gotten the go-ahead to produce this game. The Kickstarter is going to start on August 3rd, and I know I'll be backing it. They made the announcement back in February, but we finally have an official date for the Kickstarter, and the full release is estimated. What the Dicebreaker articles say? I want to say March of 2022.
So that's pretty quick, actually.
Yeah, they've been playtesting this quite a bit. They have an online curated play program where anybody who has a stable internet connection can apply for tickets and join in on online games, and they've been running this online for over a month.
Yeah,
And
it says here the role-playing game will release on March 22nd, 2022.
Yes,
with two expansions already planned for August 2022 and February 23.
Yep.
So
wow.
they're going all in with this. This is a big project. This is probably the biggest project they've ever undertaken, and they already have 3 books planned out.
This is one of the ones where I have to hang my head in nerd shame because I've not really watched The Last Airbender or The Legend of Korra. I think I've gone through a couple of episodes. That's about it. I mean, I highly
recommend it.
I watched the live action movie.
That doesn't
the
count.
The live action movie doesn't exist.
I get told that a lot.
Doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
You know, it's a shame that the Fire Lord put so much effort into killing the Airbender, and all it took M. Night Shyamalan was one movie.
That's right. Yeah, they just should have gone to M. Night Shyamalan in the first place. Is look, we need to kill the Airbender. Can you help? No problem. I'm not movie about it.
At least he didn't get a sequel, because worse movies have gotten sequels, and if they'd given him an opportunity to ruin Toph, there would have been a war.
Hey, if it had gone to Yui Ball, it would have got a sequel.
Yeah. So
but nobody would have seen it anyway.
Okay, the big thing with the movie is they tried to cram a whole season of the show into a 2-hour film.
In less than 2 hours, yeah.
And the acting was wooden, and the actors had no presence or chemistry between each other.
Yeah.
You mean that wasn't a brilliant personification of that cartoon you like? I'm shocked.
Well, they didn't have time to let any of the characters develop any chemistry because they were so fast paced. Of we gotta get to the next point, the next beat, the next event.
Yeah. And I think the actual movie was only an hour and 45 minutes.
They were globetrotting at a rapid pace. The movie Around the World in 30 Days or whatever had more time to character develop while they traveled the world.
But that speaks to what the show does well that they failed to implement in the movie, which is the character arcs and the character relationships, which this game does emphasize. I've already read through most of the playtest quick start, and which, by the way, is robust enough that you could run a one-shot or even a campaign out of it. It includes pre-gen characters, but it also includes 6 blank playbooks that you can fill out however you please. But the DNA lifts heavily from Masks, which is a game about teenage superheroes, so already it's ideally suited to be transposed onto an animated series about basically teenage superheroes.
Yeah.
Right. And Sokka, who doesn't have superpowers, but is a really capable fighter.
And I just
some really good character arcs.
I just posted this link in the chat for anybody that might want to try to go in and check out the quick start rules, because you did send me that link as well. So I went.
Yeah, please do.
I just copied it into the chat.
It's free to download. All it does, you put your email address in, it signs you up to be emailed when the Kickstarter goes live on August 3rd, and they send you basically a voucher for a free copy of the quick start on drive-through RPG.
Well, there you go. I mean, and this could be another one that we could do a one shot maybe here on the channel.
I would like that because
later on. One of you guys would have to run it because I'm not familiar with the world at all, hardly. I mean, I could run one based on the movie, no problem, guys. I could do it.
I'm familiar with the original series and part of Korra, and this is interesting. The quick start calls out 5 different eras that you could set the game in. 2 of them are obviously the time of Aang and the time of Korra. Another one is the 100 Years' War, when the Fire Nation was trying to take over the world and there was no Avatar, and everybody was just fending for themselves. There's an era of Kyoshi, which is apparently high action, a time of legends. Let's see, can I find... yeah, there's Kyoshi's era, there's Roku's era, the Avatar before Aang, who tried to stop the 100 Years' War but failed. The 100 Years' War, and then Aang, and then Korra.
Which also
I think Kyoshi was just before Roku, right?
I believe so. And one of them has roots in a comic book that I obviously did not read that fleshed out some of the elements of that particular era.
And it might mean that you're getting ready to, because I think both the first and second series is pretty much winded down to a close. They might be getting ready to do a third series under one of those eras, and maybe this is another hinting at that.
Could be. It's interesting that
extremely popular, from what I understand.
It sounds like basically they're doing the 2 eras that we got shows on, and then the 3 eras that immediately preceded the older of those 2.
Right.
So like the 3 eras preceding them immediately before.
And when a new show comes on, they could totally flip us on our ear and come up with a new era after.
Korra. Yeah. Absolutely. Hell, we don't have any information on the 2 expansion materials. They might be ramping up for a threequel series,
right?
Yeah.
Or going back into the past and fleshing out the Roku era or the Kyoshi era. Either of those would be fascinating.
Or a sequel that actually has more flashbacks to those eras, which is why they're fleshing them out.
In the Legend of Korra series, they actually had some flashback stuff to the very first Avatar. It was pretty neat.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, they went back and showed the origins of the Avatar itself.
One of these days I have to sit down and binge Aang, then take a break, and then binge Korra.
Yes. Do it.
Do it. One of these days I'll have to, when I get all the other things out of my system that I've had to do. All right.
The mechanics draw pretty heavily, like I said, from Masks, and a couple of things of note for anyone who's familiar with Masks. Lurch, you played a one-shot with me that one time.
Mm-hmm.
You remember how adults could, or anyone with influence over a character could affect their stats one way or the other, and thus affect their mechanics to some degree?
Yeah, I remember that.
They kind of copy-pasted a lesser version of that. Each of the playbooks that are available has a balance track, and each character, this also fits into the themes of the show, is torn between 2 personal values. Like, one of the Idealist was an interesting one. It has forgiveness on one end and action on the other. And certain role-playing elements that would happen during the course of a session can influence where you are on that track, which gives you bonuses to one, but penalties to the other. And so you have to maintain a characteristic and actually mechanical balance between those. The other thing is there is only one basic move for attacking people in Masks. In this one, they fleshed out the combat system almost as though they knew that one of the draws of the show was really intricate and well choreographed combat sequences. There are 3 basic combat moves. There's basically defend, attack, and observe. And when combat starts, at the beginning of each round of combat, all of the NPCs have their move written down and concealed. Then each player character determined what move they're going to do, and then all of them are revealed and are resolved in order of defense, offense, observation. And I'm really curious to playtest this and see how that handles, because there's advantages and disadvantages to each.
A really intricate game of rock, paper, scissors.
Something like that, with earlier actions influencing others. Like if you make a defense action and get a success, one of the things you can do is deal retaliation damage against anybody who attacks you during the attack phase.
Right, there you go. So you get a
I
riposte
wonder
or
if
something.
I wonder if they are going to have in there, somewhere in there. I remember in Legend of Korra they had that game they would play, that competitive tournament stuff they would do,
Yeah.
where they had like a waterbender, an earthbender, and I don't know. Let's see, they'd have one of each, so except for air, it would be rock, earth, and fire. They'd have one of each of those on each side of the teams. They're trying to knock the other ones off the ledge into the water. And they'd have like clay things for the stone, the earthbenders to hurl at people, and they would pull water out from the basin below. It'd be interesting if they had found a way to make that work within the the confines of this RPG game.
Oh yeah, I bet they could
mechanical
replicate
version.
that pretty easily.
Yeah.
And tellingly, all these moves are independent of whether a character is an element bender or a weapons expert or a tech expert. So you can incorporate your abilities however you want and learn advanced abilities either from manuscripts that you find or from masters that teach you. And that's also things that are heavily roleplay incentivized, but also reflect mechanically as you gain advances, as you level up. I'm super looking
Awesome.
forward to giving this a spin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds cool.
That's kind of giving me an idea for a new mechanic for another combat system. But we'll have to see how that percolates in my head too. All right. Well, that's another interesting one. One of these days, I'm going to get off of my posterior and on my posterior, actually, probably be laying down in bed and just run the airbender on continuous flow until I fall asleep, which I've done with a lot of things. Now, speaking of series, that's what my next topic is. One of the most popular series to come through the last couple decades, especially for people who play a lot of role-playing games and stuff, was a series called Leverage. It's modern day. There was thieves. It was Timothy Hutton was the lead character. He played the mastermind. He was a ex-insurance adjuster and investigator who went and hunted down thieves that would steal insured artwork and so on. And he ends up leaving the company because when his son gets sick, the company manages to finagle their way out of paying the bills to make the kid better. So he falls into one of those insurance loopholes. And so, of course, he blames the company for that, and he leaves, and he becomes an angry drunk. Then he gets hired to basically steal these aircraft plans, supposedly back from somebody who had stolen them from the company. And the guy who hired him was played by the guy that played the lead character in Warehouse 13, the curator guy. I can't think of his name right now. Not the two agents that went out, but the guy that kind of ran things at Warehouse 13. Anyway, he played the guy who hired him, and he had hired all these thieves to work with the mastermind in order to get his plans back. And the thieves, there was a hitter, basically a thug, a hacker, a grifter, and a cat burglar is basically the three he hired. And all of them had been chased at one time or another by Timothy Hutton's character, Nathan Ford. And then it ends up being a double cross in the first episode. And you find out that they were actually hired to steal legitimate plans that belonged to the people they were stealing them from. And he attempted to kill them at the end, but it didn't work. And so then they bring in the con artist as the fourth thief in the group. And so basically, I usually use the Leverage TV show as an example of a perfectly good all thief Dungeons and Dragons party in modern times, where each thief has a different specialization. You know, one's a combat specialist thief, one is a second story cat burglarish one, crawl through the vents kind. One is good at information gathering, the hacker, and one's good at smooth talking, the charmer, the con artist. And it was a great series, and it went through like 5 seasons. Anyway, Amazon Prime through IMDb Television had gotten a go-ahead to make a reprisal of the series, not a reimagination of it, because it brought back most of the original characters. In fact, the only one it didn't bring back was the lead character of Timothy Hutton as Nathan Ford, but they explained that away as he's dead at the start of the new season. That's like years later. But then they brought in a new lead character, which is Noah Wiley, as many can remember from things like The Librarians, who could be a really interesting character to play. And it just premiered on the 9th of July, the complete first season on Amazon Prime Video, because you get IMDb as one of the free channels that you can watch. And so I definitely recommend people go out and check it out, because you get to see the new kind of flavor of the show. Now, I will say that one of the characters leaves the show after like the second episode and is replaced by a different person in their role. I'm not going to say who or what, let you figure that out. But it's really neat, because you got Christian Kane playing the hitter. He's always a really popular actor for shows like this. You got Rosengrath, who plays the cat burglar. Some might remember her as Spencer Reed's short-lived girlfriend in Criminal Minds before she was killed at the end of an episode. Hardigan is played by a guy who's played a lot of like side parts, not a whole lot of like major roles, but I've seen him as filler characters in a lot of recent TV shows and series and stuff. So it's just worth checking out if you like that group adventure type of TV show in different settings. And especially, like I said, if you want to get an idea, if you're getting ready to play like a roguelike character in an RPG, especially if you're going to play it in something like in a more like D&D modern, like D20 modern type setting, and you want to figure out how to play your modern Robin Hood type of character, watch this show, because they basically make a company out of going out and fixing the world's wrongs for people. It's like powerful people, rule the world, and they think that they're above the law, and we provide leverage, is kind of how their intro goes. So I don't know if either of you two ever watched Leverage, but
I haven't.
You haven't? No.
So you know me. If I have a thought that goes with anything, I tend to say it. I tend to not know how to not. But in this whole section, since we started talking about Leverage, you've named off like 5 other shows that these characters have been in, or these actors have been in, and I'm kind of feeling a little bit odd here, because I haven't seen any of those shows. I haven't seen Warehouse 13. I don't remember what the other ones you mentioned were, but like I was like, Oh,
The
he's missing. Oh,
librarians.
I haven't seen that either. So yeah, the librarians, and so I'm like, dang it, I don't have any connection to any of these people in
I,
any of these shows.
I saw the first Librarians. I saw one episode of Warehouse 13.
Oh,
I've seen commercials for librarians. It looks like it could be pretty good, but I haven't gotten around to watching it.
well, Warehouse 13 is in the same world as Eureka. They even have some crossover episodes.
I saw a few minutes of an episode of Eureka at a restaurant while I was eating.
Well, they have some crossovers. The basic premise of Warehouse 13 is they've got all these artifacts that they have to bring back to the warehouse that they're like semi-magical.
Eureka was on a Sci-Fi channel, right? That was a Sci-Fi channel original,
so was
right?
Warehouse 13, yes.
Okay, so here's the problem. I didn't grow up with cable, so I didn't have like in my life, I think I've had cable for like 2 years in my life, and it was like when I was like 19 and 20. And so I didn't grow up watching Sci-Fi Channel. And that's why I had the same problem with Nickelodeon. I had tons of friends that love all these Nickelodeon shows, like Rugrats and stuff. I was like, I've seen maybe 2 episodes of Rugrats, and I was right at the age to really be into it, but I didn't have the channels.
To your benefit,
so that's why I'm out of the loop on so much of this.
Well, to your benefit, Lurch, Warehouse 13, the original Leverage, Eureka, even I'm not sure about the Librarians. I know it's on one of the streaming services, but I'm not sure which one right now. But
pretty sure I've seen it on Netflix.
The other 3 are on Amazon Prime for sure.
Oh, yeah?
Okay. Channel. So you can watch them on Amazon Prime. Of course, you end up watching them with commercials because it's IMDb. The IMDb channel is commercial heavy. But
I pay for Prime, and I'm gonna get commercials on these shows.
Yeah. That's because you're getting the free IMDb channel. It's not charging you extra for that channel. So you get commercials.
I see.
Yeah, well,
so
you might pay for like Discovery Plus or something and not have commercials.
Any of those shows have people with special powers? Because I've kind of reached a stage where that's pretty much everything I watch.
Okay, Eureka is in a town basically of all super geniuses.
Okay.
So the powers are more in the science behind it, and the occurrences around them.
I can live with that.
Think of Legend of Briscoe County Jr. and some of that kind of stuff.
I really want to watch that Resident Alien. That looks funny. Alan Tudyk.
It's really good, but it's sci-fi. I watched the first season of it using my VPN to log into a New Zealand TV station that had it because I didn't have access to Sci-Fi Channel, but I have a VPN, so I could say I'm from New Zealand and log into the New Zealand channel to watch it.
That's cool.
Yeah, but Warehouse 13, they have some super gadgets, and one of the characters is a little bit psychically sensitive. He gets like funny, tingling things like things don't feel quite correct, and one of the side characters is also psychic. So there is some powers there.
If I remember right, the ads I think I've seen for the Librarian was like really magic heavy, right?
Well, the Librarian is kind of Indiana Jones meets magic. Noah Wyle is the main character in the Librarian 1, 2, and 3, which are standalone movies. And he's not actually a main character in the Librarians. He's more of a come off character because it's a spin-off of that. But he was a college student who basically had turned himself into a professional college student. Every time he was about to get a degree, he would switch majors because he liked school so much he never wanted to leave school. And he just wanted to keep absorbing knowledge until the school forced him to graduate.
He must have some wealthy parents to keep paying for that tuition.
Well, and then the school forced him to graduate. But then he gets an invite to become the new librarian. And he shows up at the library, and he turns out that his job is to go out and find these lost artifacts. Because there's always one librarian who goes out and then they have a guardian with them, and those two go out and they get these artifacts and bring them back to the library. And the artifacts include things like Excalibur and the pan flute that Pan actually played, and these kind of
That sounds interesting.
major magical artifacts. And the librarian is like an extra dimensional space inside the New York Smithsonian Library or whatever.
Okay.
Anyway,
Sounds cool.
and the advisor characters is what's her name? Jane Curtin, who played Janeway in Voyager.
Oh, cool.
And the other one is Bob Newhart. Which is, of course, Professor Proton from, what you call it?
Big
Bang
Theory.
Big Bang Theory. So they're both in it a bit. Now, in the Librarians, it's a spin-off show. And the main character of the librarian ends up being taken over by 3 different characters who were all potential librarians when Noah Wyle got the job, and for one reason or another. But somebody in the first episode is trying to kill them, and so they bring the 3 potential librarians together to the library, and they kind of become like a little strike force, and they get their own guardian because the new guardian has to replace the old guardian, and that's played by Rebecca Ramage Stamos. And one of the new librarians is Christian Kane, who plays in Leverage. And then there's a girl that's got she's got all mathematics in her head, and she can constantly figure out instantly numbers. One of the potential librarians is a super jewel thief and cat burglar, and then Christian Kane is he's a redneck who secretly taught himself all kinds of stuff like art history and everything else, and got these PhDs and stuff, but nobody in the town he comes from knows that. They think he's just a redneck, son of a redneck, but he does like distance lectures and all these things anonymously, and publishes all these works in science because he's really developed in science and art history and all this other things. Because that's the whole thing. A librarian has got to be well versed in lots of different knowledge, and each one is in their own way. And so they become a strike force with Rebecca Ramage. So while Noah Wiley's out doing individual things,
hang on, is that the actress who played Mystique in the old X-Men movies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And then, so while Noah Wiley's out, because in the first episode of the series, the connection to the library, because of the invasion that they were trying to do when they were killing him, gets kind of severed. They end up going to a satellite office of the library, and instead of having Jane Curtin and Bob Newhart as their guide, they have John Larroquette as their guide. And Noah Wiley's out trying to reestablish the connection to the original warehouse and all the artifacts that are stored in it, while these guys are acting like a kind of a task force to do the other part of Noah Wiley's job, which leaves him free to go try to attach to the library. So that's kind of that in a synopsis, but we're going way off on a tangent here, so I don't want to go too much further. But they're great series to check out if you've not seen them before. Well worth it if you can find them. And I would definitely recommend it in the case of the librarians. First, watching the 3 librarian movies. They were made for TV movies with Noah Wiley, and watch those first. Then start watching the librarians, and I think there's 4 or 5 seasons of it, and that's it. But they're really good. They were like TBS series.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely worth your time, especially if you like a good adventures with at least a touch of magic in there, which
Yeah,
I love. In magic and superpowers, you know me, that's my
yeah,
bread and butter.
yeah.
So anyway, but we're gonna go forward because we got a lot to talk about this episode, and we spent a lot longer on this than I ever intended.
Yeah.
So let's go to your next topic, which is Nickelodeon All Stars Brawl.
Yeah. So there is works on a new video game called Nickelodeon All Star Brawl, which is like Super Smash Brothers, but all about Nickelodeon cartoon characters.
So it's kind of like the mobile
I
game
watched.
that's the Fox cartoon mobile game where they have like the Family Guys fighting the Bob's Burger guys and stuff.
I don't know if I
But
want to compare it to a mobile game.
well, this would
It's,
be more
uh,
extensive,
but
obviously.
yeah. And so I'm hoping it's going to be really good. It's too early to say, but they've so far are confirmed characters. I'm going to just go over those real quick. The characters have been confirmed. Ablina from Real Monsters, Danny Phantom from Danny Phantom, Helga Pataki from Hey Arnold, Zim from Invader Zim, Lincoln Loud from the Loud House, Lucy Loud from the Loud House, Powdered Toast Man from Ren and Stimpy, Reptar from Rugrats, SpongeBob SquarePants, Patrick Star from SpongeBob, Sandy Cheeks from SpongeBob, Leonardo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Nigel Thornberry.
From the Thornberries.
Yeah, from the Wild Thornberries.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Wow. So that's
that's
pretty
the
extensive.
that's the roster we know from their announcement trailer that they put out. Of those, the ones I'm excited for, the ones I'm a fan of are Invader Zim and the Ninja Turtles.
Well, yeah,
So I'm
definitely the
really
Ninja Turtles.
those are the ones that I'm planning on maining those if this game comes out and actually ends up being pretty good.
Danny Phantom wasn't
I'm
bad
really
either.
hoping it is. Danny Phantom looks like something I would enjoy, but I didn't get to watch it.
I watched
Inva-
some of it. It's really good.
So, kind of like these other things, like my Ninja Turtles watching was mostly an older version of Ninja Turtles I saw on 20th Century Fox or whatever, on Fox Kids or whatever.
80s and 90s.
And then Invader Zim, I got to see a few episodes at a friend's house. I saw, I watched like the 80s, 90s Ninja Turtles. This is a Ninja Turtles from a little bit later that I didn't get to watch. But it's the same characters, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I'm still attached to those characters no matter the generation.
I think there was one short-lived series that added a female turtle, but then I think she went away. That was Venus de Milo.
Yeah, that was on a. I remember that being on the live-action Ninja Turtles show.
Right.
And
I didn't watch much.
They even had a crossover episode. They had a crossover episode. Yeah, with the Power Rangers.
Yep.
That was insane.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the Ninja Turtles are in the same universe as the Power Rangers, so they established that with that crossover. In fact, it was, I want to say like Lightspeed Rescue was the one they did it, but I'm not absolutely sure. It was that or in space? It was either Lightspeed Rescue or space.
I'm pretty confident it was in space.
Yeah, but it was a good episode. I watched it because I've watched all the Power Rangers, every single one.
And then like Invader Zim, I saw a few episodes of at a friend's house when I was younger, and I thought it was pretty amusing. But I didn't get to watch much. But later on Netflix, I found it and watched the whole series a couple of times through.
I haven't watched all of Invader Zim. I've only watched a little bit of it, but I do like it.
I love Zim.
Zim is like,
Zim is the Firefly of cartoons. It should have gone on so much longer, but for administrative reasons, it just didn't.
I heard that it's coming back for a new season.
I heard something about that too.
Right? Yeah.
Because I thought that the movie that they did on Netflix was their last hurrah.
No, I heard they're supposed
to be it was
reboot?
expected to be for years, and I saw a preview recently where it had the two aliens that hated him from his planet going,
The
"Hey, you
tallest.
remember that?" And they're like, "Hey, you remember that guy Zim?" What? Who? He's like, that little alien dude we hated and we sent to Earth to get him out of the way. Oh yeah, him. Whatever happened to that guy? I don't know. And then it's like, boss, we're getting a call. From who? From Zim on Earth. Ah, crap. And then, like, he comes on camera, he's like, my plan has finally succeeded. And then I don't know when that's coming out or anything, but that's just what I remember from seeing the trailer a couple of weeks ago, or the ad a couple of weeks ago.
I've heard something about it, too. Not a lot, because I don't follow Invader Zim like a lot of people do. But in passing, I saw something about it, too. Yeah. And that might be a good time for me I need to go back and watch all of them. Like I said, I've watched the Danny Phantoms. I'm not a big fan of the Thornberrys or the Rugrats. I hate SpongeBob.
I'd never heard of the Loud House, but the character model for Lucy Loud looks good. Oblina was a good pick. I always thought that Ah Real Monsters was an underrated show.
I watched a little bit of All Real Monsters. And I've never heard of the Loud House either. I've never even heard of it.
I didn't get to watch a lot of All Real Monsters, but I do remember enjoying it a lot when I did get to watch it. Like, I'd be at a hotel or at a friend's house, and I liked it quite a bit.
I often got that one confused with Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends or whatever. But yeah, those two.
You want to know what else is on Nickelodeon that has a hopeful chance of making it on here? Was Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, really ironic that none of them made the cut, although...
Well, this is only what's been revealed so far. There's likely going to be more characters announced.
And this all is kind of a cartoony violence, whereas Avatar is actual, like, martial arts shenanigans. So we'll see. Although some of Aang's airbending shenanigans get kind of comical. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Also, I always watch it on streaming services now, but isn't Power Rangers a Nickelodeon product?
No, Power Rangers was a Saban product, which was published on Fox.
Oh, is it Fox? Okay, I know it's Haim Saban.
Which is how
used to be Haim Saban and
I grew up watching all of the Power Rangers, and I couldn't have if it wasn't on regular network television, broadcast
Nintendo
television.
was the one that owns it now. I think the new episodes air on Nickelodeon.
Nickelodeon.
I think
I'm not sure where. I don't know about where the new ones air.
Yeah, I think that is, but I mean, don't absolutely quote me on it. I know it's not Cartoon Network, and I don't believe it's Disney, which means Nickelodeon is probably where it is. There is Fox Kids
those
too.
Are toys.
Yeah.
Well, Hasbro still has the toy licensing rights, apparently.
Well, Hasbro's got the toy licensing rights to us when we die. Don't you know that?
Hasbro, yeah. I think Hasbro bought the rights to Power Rangers right after the last movie came out.
Yeah, and they're working on the new movie now, which I'm looking forward to because it's supposed to be an adaptation of one of the Green Ranger storylines. And, of course, Tommy's my favorite. So...
They are currently owned whole cloth by Hasbro, although they were apparently owned by Walt Disney for a few years.
Huh. Disney let go of a property that was actually profitable? Wow.
2002 to 2010, according to Wikipedia. Then they went back to Saban, which had rebranded, and then Hasbro acquired them in 2018.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild because Disney doesn't usually like to let go of properties that are actively giving them profit. Yeah. Not if it's actively giving them profit. Like they made the mistake of sublets licensing out X-Men and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and stuff when they were not currently giving them profits, and they really regret that now. But luckily they've gotten back some of the rights and stuff.
It might just be that the Power Rangers, because there was a period of time I hear, because it was it was around the time I stopped watching it when Disney would have bought it, because I stopped watching it really close to the turn of the century, because the show started in 90. 3, and it was around 2000 or so that I stopped watching it. 2000, 2001. And you said Disney bought it in what, 2003?
2002, I think he
2002.
said. Yeah.
2002. So Disney bought it right around or just after I stopped watching it. And I've heard that there was a gap in time for several years where Power Rangers really sunk down in popularity a lot. And then it changed hands and ownership and became popular again.
Well, they really need Haim Saban at the helm of that because it's really his baby. If Haim
Yeah.
is not the guy running things don't get done quite right.
So I think that's what the story was. I think Disney bought it, and then Disney failed to do anything good with it, to make anything that was successful, and sold it back to Saban, who then made it successful again.
See, they should have bought it, but still hired Saban to still executively produce it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the show could live without Shuki Levy. He left after, like, the 4th or 5th season. But Haim Saban has been with it for most of its run, and it's really him taking the Rangers from Japan to the U.S. and making it what it is. But
Yeah.
who knows what'll happen?
So-
The future, as always, will tell. I just can't
Yeah.
wait for the new movie to come out because it's a Green Ranger story, supposedly.
Ooh.
And like I said, Tommy's my favorite.
Well, I know that they were planning on the Green Ranger movie as the sequel to the most recent movie, but then Hasbro bought it, and they're rebooting the franchise again because they didn't care for that version of the movie that they got.
It was.
No,
And
I
so-
understand why it didn't do well or why it was poorly received, but it was a good movie.
Yeah,
if it was
I liked
taken as a standalone movie and not taken as a Power Rangers movie, it was pretty decent. If you
Even
thought
as a
of
Power
it-
Rangers movie, it's aged up in tone, but they're teenagers and it's 2017. What are you gonna do?
But
Yeah.
they changed a lot of the stuff, like now Rita Repulsa is an ex-Ranger, and it just it didn't have some of the patented silliness that makes the Power Rangers what it is.
They're trying to make it
I
more
guess.
serious than before.
Yeah, and you really need
I
the
kind of,
Alpha
I mean,
Flight
I really,
characters
I love the movie, but I did kind of like joke about how it was a 90-minute Breakfast Club sequel or reboot with an episode of Power Rangers at the end.
yeah, right.
But as iconic and as beloved as the Breakfast Club is, I consider that a compliment.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
an insult,
Yeah.
but it is a funny
that
observation.
that is a John
I think.
Hughes film you're talking about here. And John Hughes made some of the best films of that
Yeah.
era. In fact, he made all the best films of that era, pretty much.
Honestly, my personal complaint was just that the Zords were too bland. I felt like the
Yeah.
That's
Zords
fair.
could have used some better artistic design to it.
My thinking was if they were going to do a full movie and they wanted to make it that more serious and stuff, they should have put that kind of care into the Zords. And the Zords should have
Yeah.
had more of a starring role in the movie.
The Zords should have been better done, and then Goldar, I think, was also pretty weakly done in this.
Yeah, that's right. Because Goldar in the movie was basically just a giant gold statue, wasn't he? It wasn't even a character per se, just a golem.
Yeah,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, and that kind of like his Goldar is an iconic character that even comes back in some of the later series when Rita's gone, and so you don't want
Yeah,
to
and even in the early series, even in the early series, he was kind of a starscream to Rita Repulsa's Megatron.
That's exactly what I would call him too. He's a starscream.
And we did not get that at all, and that was disappointing. So I loved the movie. It had a few faults, but overall I really liked it and was looking forward. They had planned 5 sequels to it, so there's going to be 6 total movies. But then Hasbro bought it and they scrapped that whole thing and they're rebooting it, and no one really knows what they're doing with it for the new boots. But there has been rumors of them crossing it over with the Transformers franchise because the same company owns Transformers.
Yeah, because Hasbro owns it.
Who knows?
Yeah. We'll see.
But
we'll have to see on that one. Okay.
But the Nickelodeon thing, I wanted to say before, the Nickelodeon game, I am a little bit worried about its quality because we just had it announced, and it's scheduled. They're expecting to release it later this year. We
And
don't know
this
the release date exactly, but
this
later this
picture's
year.
not the most appealing. The picture looks almost like they cut and pasted the characters onto a backdrop and didn't even worry about trying to bring them and blending them in any way.
I mean, you don't want to blend them too much because you want them to keep their uniqueness. It's like Smash Brothers; they have all the different characters have their own unique stuff.
But
But
you kind of want them to fit more into the backdrop than this. This almost looks like we've got a shrinky dink layout going on, and they're just a bunch of shrinky dinks stuck on a poster. You know.
So I'm of the mind that another Smash Brothers game that's well built is something we could really use because Smash Brothers is an amazing game.
And because
Getting more of that is not bad, you know, as long as it's well made.
And because
Give
it's
it some
ending,
competition.
it's gonna need a spiritual successor.
Yeah, the current Smash Bros is supposed to be the last Smash Bros, or at least the last one that they're intending on making, with one more DLC character coming out sometime before long, and then it's over. So yeah,
Okay.
I want to see another game that's of that same brand that's successful. PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale was a well done game.
Right.
I loved it, but it wasn't as big of a hit because a lot of people are like, it's just a Smash Bros game that's not as good as Smash Bros. I was like, you know,
Okay. Well, we're getting
not
ready
every.
to go.
Anyway,
We're getting ready to go into media.
go ahead.
I'm going to talk about my flashback recommendation for the week. I also have a little quick side note on one of the shows I mentioned several weeks back that we talked about, Sweet Tooth. This is the real quick side note is just, I don't know if anybody here realized it because I just recently found out that Robert Downey Jr. and his wife were the executive producers on Sweet Tooth.
Oh.
Yeah, that surprised the hell out of me. I was like, because I found an interview with them about how Sweet Tooth came to be as a TV series. I was like, Robert Downey Jr., really? Wow, he's not even in the movie or anything, but he executive produced. It's just not what you expect. So that was just an aside that I just found out earlier today. But for my flashback this week, we're going to go. We've talked about virtual reality all through things, and there's been virtual reality movie adaptations for years. Tron being probably one of the most famous, but still very, very popular back in the 80s was Lawnmower Man. And the Jeff Fahey and Timothy Dalton movie was a really interesting look at where VR could be going and using it as a method, as a training method, and increasing intelligence in subjects. But it was done with a little bit of a dark backdrop to it. I will warn, there's a bunch of sexuality in the movie for people who are not looking for movies really, really heavy in the sexuality. But their liquid display kind of adaptation of the bodies in virtual reality is an interesting take on things.
It's been more than 20 years since the last time I watched Lawnmower Man. But correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that a horror film? Isn't that classified as a horror feature film?
It's horror sci-fi. It's a horror sci-fi. Because at the end, Jeff Fahey's Lawnmower Man tries to basically take over the internet and thus the world.
Yeah.
And basically, the internet doesn't really exist per se for the most common man during the time of this movie. It's before it became real mainstream. But the World Wide Network is a bit older, as you know, in IT, than a lot of people give it credit for. It just was niche used by certain companies and stuff. And us BBSers that were out there playing bulletin board games and then touching on the internet that way. But Jeff Fahey
Welcome to the internet.
Yeah. Jeff Fahey plays a character named Job. He's a ward of the church, which is why he has such a religious name, Job. And he's basically, they mention in the movie that he's got basically an IQ of about 40. So he is mentally deficient, but he's really good at repairing machinery and mowing lawns. He's a good worker, and he's basically got the mind of a child. He likes comic books, but he can't read. You know, his best friend is a little boy. The boy can read better than he can because he can't read. Probably couldn't even write his name. Uh, he lives in the church shed and basically cleans up the church at night, and then goes with the priest's brother during the day to mow lawns, which is why he's called the lawnmower man, and do like general weeding and stuff, and do some minor repair work around town. Among other things, he's the guy that mows the lawns of the chief scientist, which is Timothy Dalton, back before anybody really knew who Timothy Dalton was. And Timothy Dalton is working for a government contract through the military to use virtual reality and pharmaceuticals to train. Right now, they're testing it on chimps in order to make soldiers that were perfect killing machines for war. And he's getting really disgruntled with the fact that all of his research is being used for war, when he really wants his virtual reality tech to advance human society as a whole and teach humans. Uh, his lead chimp, the best chimp he's had, gets away because he's smart enough now after all the conditioning that he breaks out of his cell and then breaks out of the government facility and goes running and meets Job. Well, Job mistakes him for the character in one of his comic books called Cybo-Man. And he sees he's hurt. He's got like a gunshot wound and everything. And he ends up, instead of getting attacked by the ape, the chimp, with the gun he had stolen from one of the guards, the chimp can look at Job and see that he's basically innocent and harmless. He sees how his eyes don't dilate like he's in fear or anything. He's just an innocent. And so he's a non-threat in the little heads-up display that you see. And Job takes him into his shed and protects him. Okay. But then the government guys come in, and Timothy Dalton wants to not get the chimp killed, but the government ends up shooting the chimp and killing the dead, which, of course, traumatizes Job, because Job thinks he's Cybo-Man, his comic book hero, his favorite comic book character, getting killed.
He the Timothy Dalton character in this kind of sounds like the Timothy Dalton character in Doom Patrol, where he has a daughter who's like part caveman.
That
he's trying to protect.
Yeah, in some ways. But Timothy Dalton is so obsessed with his work that like his wife barely sees him, and because he is married. There's one sexy neighbor that doesn't notice Job in the beginning, but as what happens is Timothy Dalton goes on a hiatus from work for the government. They talk him into doing that, taking a leave of absence instead of quitting, because he wants to quit, because he wants to take his stuff into the private sector. He doesn't want to work on the aggressive protocols anymore. He wants to work on just the education side of it. And he gets this idea. It's like, Job's only got like an IQ of 40. And so he invites Job in to play some of his games with his friend Peter. And Peter's the next door neighbor of the scientist and Job's best friend. They both talk comic books and stuff together. So him and Peter come in and they play some of Timothy Dalton's games, which include like racing through VR space and some character matching games that he just has Job do that doesn't bother with Peter on. But then he convinces Job that he can make him smarter. You want to be smarter, don't you? Because people will sometimes take advantage of you. And so he starts working the protocols, but he's not adding the aggression factors that were put into the chimp. And Job is learning at an accelerated rate. I mean, he starts, kind of cleaning himself up a little bit, standing straighter, wearing better clothing. He used to just wear like t-shirts and overalls with suspenders. Now he's mowing the lawn bare chested with a six pack of abs, and the sexy neighbor is like, "Hey, Job."
Man, my VR never gave me six pack abs.
Well,
I've spent hours in it.
Well, it's not the VR didn't give him the six pack abs. He was in pretty good shape because all he does is mow lawns and clean stuff all day long, and he's a ward of the church. So it's not like they let him overeat or anything. So he's probably fed little more than scraps. And it comes to find out the priest even beats him with a belt to keep the devil out of him because, of course, the misconceptions back then that haven't completely calmed down nowadays, really. It's just they got to keep more secretive about it. But they still do that in some parishes and stuff. But
I saw a chart the other day about how left-handed people became more common after like the 1930s when they stopped making a big deal about it, and it went up to like 12% of people are left-handed.
That's because left-handed people were supposedly touched by the devil.
Right? And I was like, I went to school, and I was in elementary school in the 90s, and I got my hand hit by a ruler for my teachers if I used my left hand to write. Like, I wasn't allowed to use my left hand.
My brother Bill is dyslexic and left-handed. He was held back a year and everything and stuff. And it's not his fault that A, he's left-handed, and B, he's dyslexic. But he didn't know he was dyslexic at the time. So he's held back a year in school. And he's got an IQ like mine. He's got a 185 IQ, just like me. He's damn intelligent.
Yeah.
It's when you consider Albert Einstein was in the 160 range. He had no business being held back in school. It's just the fact that he didn't understand. And there's a lot of stuff that the organized religious groups were a party to.
Anyway.
But we're not going to get into religious debates. But anyway, so as the show progresses... So
the lawnmower man, he gets smarter as he does the VR and becomes more sophisticated, sort of.
He becomes more mature because he gives up comic books. He starts reading like philosophy and physics and stuff like that, which of course the priest tries to take away from him because it's teaching him science, which is evil. And oh boy, right? And then but he discovered girls because now he's mature enough. Before he was basically prepubescent. He never hit puberty, so even though his body might have gone through the changes, his mind never recognized it, and so he never acted upon them. Well, now as his mind is catching up with his body, he's got this one helpful neighbor that's more than willing to bring him into the fold when it comes to sexuality. In fact, when she sees him at the gas station filling up his gas tank for his lawnmower, she comes up and is like, "Do I know you?" He says, "Yeah, I mow your lawn." She says, "Like, no, you're not the lawnmower man." Uh-huh. And then she invites him in for lemonade. And of course, the priest's brother that takes him out doing the lawn mowing, he's a good old boy, a little bit of a drunk, but a good old boy. He says, "Oh, she wants your body, boy. Go in there. Don't just sit there. Go for it, man." He's a drunk Irishman, man. He does it great. He sends him in there and stuff, and so he gets his first experience with women, and he likes it. So she kind of acts like his girlfriend through part of it, till he ends up burning out her brain in VR, trying to make her smarter, because he wanted to share the experience with somebody. And so he breaks into the lab with her and has her, but it burns out her brain, and she becomes a little more than an automaton after that sequence. But the people that are the military that were behind the funding of the research, they actually know what he's doing, even though he had told the one guy that got him back into his lab to use the equipment to keep it under wraps. He didn't, of course. And his bosses told him to get the doctor to restart the Series 5 protocols with the aggression vectors
Yeah.
in it. And instead of talking the doctor into doing it, the go-between guy just went and swapped out the pharmaceuticals. So he didn't realize that he'd restarted the Series 5 vectors on Job. But one of the other side effects of unlocking the other parts of the brain was Job starts to develop psychokinetic powers, begins to hear thoughts and has telekinesis.
Yeah.
So, which of course we all know that we only use 8 to 10% of our brain right now. And one of the theories is if we started using that other 90% of our brain, somewhere in that 90% is the secret to psychokinetic ability, psionics.
Yeah.
And that's at least the theory behind it. And so
Yeah.
this
I think we might leave a little bit of the movie for people to watch.
Yeah, but that's the horror aspect of the movie is
Yeah.
where that starts to come in, and I'm not going to say how it ends or what finally happens in the movie, but if you want a good flashback movie, this goes all the way back to the 80s. It's a contemporary movie with, like I said, Tron, War Games, games of that era when Timothy Dalton was not a household name. People didn't know who it is. Jeff Fahey was not somebody everybody knew. And virtual reality was still just something you read about in sci-fi novels. You didn't really see it. Like nowadays, we've got our sci-fi goggles going in with like PlayStation VR and the other optic systems, Oculus Pro, and all that. We're still not quite to the point where we plug ourselves in and see us in the virtual reality world and get on a freaking gyroscopic wheel or anything.
Not yet.
But I'm waiting for that. I want to be able to get into a haptic chair that has that 360-degree movement axis and just totally go out. They're probably not going to get to it before I die, unfortunately. Hey, broken toilet, didn't see you there. Anyway, but that's it for this one. And after that, we're going to go into our mainstream media stuff. Now, usually at this point, we say goodbye to Greg. However, I think you were going to make a couple of comments because the two of you did end up seeing the Tomorrow Wars since our last show.
Yes.
So you want to talk about
we
that
both
for just a couple minutes?
Sure. Before we get on to that, I wanted to do a quick throw out there about there's a new trailer for season 3 of Titans. I thought I'd mention real quick.
Yeah, I was going to hit that after.
I don't want to give away too much. I didn't want to give away too much about what is in the trailer. But it makes for an exciting third season premise.
And if you want to see yourself, just go out and look for it on YouTube.
Yeah. It's easy to find. It's going to premiere on August 22nd on HBO Max. I think they said the first 3 episodes will come out in the same day, and then it'll be an episode a week after that.
Isn't that like some 4 days before Stargirl comes out? Because I think that's the 26th.
It's around the same time. I don't remember the exact date for Stargirl. It's
within a week because I thought
it's around the same time.
Either the 23rd or the 26th is what I was thinking with Stargirl. So
something like that.
That's going to be on HBO Max and CW. So that makes it to where HBO Max and or the CW streaming service is going to get even more of our business because
so
we love those CW shows.
Yeah, so I wanted to get that thrown out there before we forget about it or anything. And while Greg was stepped away, but now he's back and perfect time because we're ready to talk about the Tomorrow War.
Like I was saying, and you missed it, Greg, is since our last show, both of you two got to see the Tomorrow Wars. So although I touched on it last week, I figured you two might want to talk little bit about it before you go ahead and leave for the week, Greg. Um, just a little
Yeah.
background for people who didn't
So
watch the last show about it. Tomorrow Wars is a sci-fi uh, action movie on Amazon Prime, starring Chris Pratt. And I gave a lot of my opinions last week, so I'll let you guys
yeah.
mainly handle it this week.
Okay. So I'm gonna try to avoid too many spoilers for this one. Because it's still a relatively new film, and it's not one of the main like Marvel DC films, right?
Right.
But it's definitely worth the watch. I felt I watched it last night.
I told you.
Um, the ads didn't quite catch me. The ads. I was just like, this might be okay. But then I watched it, and it was an intense. It was an intense kind of sci-fi horror type film, right? Where you get your main character, Chris Pratt. He's at home. He's got a daughter, and um, a family, and he's trying to be a scientist. He's a science teacher trying to move up in the world, and then while watching a football game, World Series or something like that, a portal opens up in the middle of a field, and a bunch of young people come out, soldiers, that tells everyone in 28 years or something like that from now, we'll be at war with aliens that we're losing horribly, and most of the population's been destroyed. And so they start coming up with this means of drafting people into the war to send to the future to help fight the war on like these week-long tours. It's a
Yeah.
worldwide draft, so everyone's getting pulled in and everything. And the I feel like, sure, if you really want to nitpick it, there's a few little elements that you could like kind of try to pick apart with a couple of the logic moments, but short of that, overall, uh, it makes you feel for the characters, and it has
Well,
a
and
lot of like suspenseful action, where just like edge of your seat kind of action. Yeah,
and like I said last week, I didn't tell you what it was because I wanted to wait till you guys saw the movie. But they do make a pretty decent attempt to explain how they get away from the paradox with their Einstein-Rosen bridge anchoring system. Um,
yeah,
so they do work at
and
that because
so
as long as the anchor is in effect, any changes they make won't make a new timeline because it's all considered continuous. But as soon as the anchor goes away, then they can make changes to the timeline itself.
yeah, um, potentially, they're not
Potentially,
entirely sure.
right?
Yeah, they're
Because
still a
they
little
have
bit
no way of
unsure about
knowing.
how it all works.
Because they have no way of
Yeah,
knowing. Because once they sever the link, they can't get any information from the future to see how it went.
yeah. Um, but they do try to like they draft people that aren't alive during the future war. We learned that fairly quickly that's one of their criteria for who they draft is they don't draft people who were alive and fought in the wars in the future because that might impact the path up to that point when we get there this next time around. And so they're picking people that died prior to that, which was an interesting way of preventing paradoxes.
Yeah.
Um, I still think there could be some consequences because but yeah, the rules on time travel are always kind of fuzzy. It's hard to say where things are going to go. What's this? Would recommend. Oh, so yeah, it's on rented Blockbuster. Yeah, it probably is. It might be available to rent at Blockbuster. There's only one left in the world. Uh, it might be available by the time you drive there. At least it's in Alaska.
Right?
The only Blockbuster left in the world's in Alaska.
Yeah.
Uh,
Otherwise,
and,
but you can usually start if you don't have
Yeah.
an Amazon Prime account. If you're a student in the U.S., you can get one for free, and two, you could probably do a 7-day trial, and that's enough to at least get you to watch something like the Tomorrow Wars.
And Invincible while you're at it, and probably some other good stuff.
Oh
Well, yeah,
man, Invincible.
you can watch the Leverage continuation. You can watch Invincible. You can watch Tomorrow Wars. I mean, there's so much
Yeah.
you can watch on Amazon Prime. It's a well worth it kind of a streaming service. Not to mention,
Yeah.
you also get the shipping benefits. You get one free monthly subscription on Twitch, so you can show your favorite Twitch presenters that you like them. Uh, yeah, Greg's awake. He just spoke. There's a little bit of a lag, so you'll hear him in a second. We were just mainly letting Lurch do a lot of the talking right there. But yeah, we try not to interrupt each other too much. I'm probably worst at it because I interrupt everybody. But yeah, you can
Greg,
get
Greg,
your own
what'd you
Amazon
think of
account.
Greg, what'd you think of the Tomorrow Wars? What are some of your thoughts on it?
I agree with you about the trailers. Kind of underwhelming, which is sad because I also think the acting was one of the strongest parts of the movie. The character relationships were good.
Yeah.
They did a good job establishing Chris Pratt's character as a military expert. Like when they first bamf to the future, and everything starts going to hell because, of course, it does.
Yeah.
He immediately steps up and he's identified as the de facto squad leader, basically because he's one of the few people there with prior military experience. And even the other guy, the black guy who's had 2 or 3 tours previously in the future war, seems like he's the generic jerkbag of the squad, but there's actually a reason he's that way.
Yeah. So yeah, the characters were great. Like the acting and the character development was surprisingly good.
The relationship between Pratt and his daughter was really strong and well fleshed out.
And J.K. Simmons, this is one of his best roles. I mean, the only role I think I would say is better than this is as J. Jonah Jameson.
You don't see a bad performance from him, and this is very on brand with the kind of characters that he plays.
I mean, J. Jonah Jameson practically looked like him before he ever got into the role. So it's like he really is Jameson. But this is
as the disappointing father and the grizzled survivalist.
Insane prepper, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to give this away too much, but one of my favorite lines in the movie was when someone's like, I hate to agree with conspiracy Santa over here.
Yeah.
But he might be right.
Hey, I might get called that at some point in time if I ever became a conspiracy nut. You know,
but there was a point in the movie where, and you might know what I'm talking about. I don't want to give away too much. There's a point in the movie where it felt like the movie was over, and I was like, "Damn, that was a quick movie, right?" It seemed like the film was over, and then I had to pause it for some reason at that point, right? And I was like, "Okay, this is a good." Like I think Allie came in the room needing something or whatever, so I had to pause it, and I saw I still had like 45 minutes left of the film. I was like, "Oh, there's a lot more of this movie than I thought there was." It felt like we were at an end here.
But it felt like it was over, and then they start the third act.
Yeah.
And actually explain where the aliens come from and how we need to put them down for good.
Yeah. And so it was a solid third act, but I just was thinking it was a quick, it was so intense, for that first 90 minutes. It was such an intense film that I thought it was just over. It felt like a quick movie.
Something else. There was a shot late in the movie, and again, I'll also try to avoid spoilers. But they find basically the hive of the aliens where they all come from, and they don't do it felt kind of Prometheus-esque, the alien movie, but they don't overemphasize the size of the hive. Like you can see around a corner and see just a bunch of pods in the background, and they do pans and cuts while they're fighting off the aliens, but they never do a big sweeping shot of, oh my god, there's millions of them. But they
Yeah.
give you just enough to make what you've seen earlier make sense and be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This explains how they were able to spread so quickly and wreak so much havoc in such a short amount of time.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm starting to get a
Yeah.
little. I'm going to break in here a second, guys. If you guys keep bad mouthing Greg in the
Okay.
chat channel, I'm going to kick you guys out. Greg is doing just fine. Just because you don't understand the big words he uses, that's not his problem. That's yours. If you're going to keep shitting on Greg, he's a valuable member of our team, and we'll get rid of you first. So
I'm
stop
sorry,
it.
I'm not on the screen. What's going on?
No,
The chat.
they're bad mouthing you about using too many big words and overanalyzing and stuff. And I'm like, no, stop it. You know, I'm sure most of it is half in humor, but still, it's enough is enough, guys. I've tried reprimanding you in chat. Now I'm telling you straight out on the air. You'll have to stop that. Anyway, sorry about that, guys.
So yeah. So what we were saying, I think I've given away as much as I want to give away about the plot and about the activities in the film. But yeah, very much worth a watch as long as you can handle suspenseful films, because I know some people get a little more edgy on it. It's not like gross horror. It's just like really suspenseful action and threats of life, like throughout most of the film. It's like really intensely dangerous most of the time. So
yeah, and like I said,
I think that's
the
all
acting is
I wanted to say.
And the acting is just beyond. If you're a fan of just good acting for the sake of acting, watch the movie for that alone, and you're going to see some of the best performances some of these actors have done. Anyway, we're going to go into the rest of the media now, and from this point on, it actually is going to be rather spoiler heavy, except for Black Widow. Our tradition is when a new Marvel type movie comes out, the first week we try not to do too many spoilers, and then we'll hit it with more spoilers next week. But we will talk about Black Widow a little bit. But this is usually where we say goodbye to Greg for the week. Next week is Holdfast Brewing Company, correct?
That's right. Third Wednesday of every month.
Okay, so
I'll be there with some games, and the hosts are good people. They're some of the best hosts I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
Yeah, they have a puzzle competition, great microbrews, excellent food, good atmosphere, very clean, very socially distance friendly place to go. And you can see Greg live there at the Holdfast Brewing Company here in Springfield, Missouri. If you have ideas for the show, you want to mention them to Greg, that's a good place to come up to him and say, hey, Greg, I was wondering about this. You guys heard anything about that? And he'll pass it along to us, and we'll see if we can dig into some more details. We talk about anything in the nerdosphere. And, of course, like I said at the beginning of the show, Greg is our director of tabletop gaming. So card games, board games, role-playing games, dice games. These are the games that you really want to go to ask Greg, because that's his bread and butter. But we're going to bid him good night for this week, I guess. And we will see him in 2 weeks' time here. But some of you guys can see him over at Holdfast Brewing Company.
Okay. See you around. Take care.
And let me switch over to our two-man screen real quick. And hold on, I got to make a change.
Okay.
So it shows up right.
So
there we go.
So we want to start with it.
Well, as we normally start with, we're going to go into the CW shows. Now, usually the one we start with, we kind of do them a little bit in chronological order, which means Legends of Tomorrow is the first one, which would be our natural start. I kind of want to save Superman and Lois for the last because there's a lot that happened in that one in the CW section of things. But yeah, so the CW verse is now called, or the Berlanti verse, used to be called the Flash verse, has been growing, expanding, mutating, and it's an ever-changing world. It's had probably the biggest crossover event to ever hit television when it did the Crisis event. And this week we had another excellent run of shows. We've had a few of them on hiatus at different times in the last couple of weeks. This is the first week back where pretty much every currently running show actually had an episode. So, let's see. Legends of Tomorrow. Let me remind myself of what happened here. I've got to go back to Sunday real quick. I'll let you start, Lurch, because I got to remind myself.
Okay. So Legends of Tomorrow. This week was basically the Baby Yoda episode.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah, it was a sitcom thing. So it was Bayrod's birthday, and
Yeah,
none of the legends remembered.
His 25th birthday. Yes.
Yes. So he's like a quarter century old now. So it starts off with him getting a reminder, which, to be fair to the legends, he himself forgot it was his birthday until Gideon reminded him. But but then he did. It took him a little while to realize the others didn't know. But yeah, they had an anomaly that was right outside of the filming of his favorite TV show of all time. And so when they get there, he's like, "Oh, this was a fake anomaly to lure me to this place so you can surprise me for my birthday for a live taping of my favorite show ever." And it was like Best Buds or something like that. It was a show about a couple of like Muslim pot smoker best friends that were roommates or something like that.
Yeah, it was totally like
and like the main character
pot smoker episode.
Exactly. It was like a Cheech and Chong type of show.
Very much so.
And it really kind of, the main character was basically Bayrod, with a different actor and not going on travels through time.
Yep.
And so he's there trying to watch the show, and the spaceship crash lands into the filming of the show. And like the show's not doing well. The show ended up, they know that the show cancels as a not especially popular show, but Bayrod absolutely loved it.
And remember, one of the legends caused that crash.
Yeah, one of the legends accidentally caused it to crash there. It was coming to land down in the forest, but the Texan girl shoots it with her new gun, and it veers it off course, and it crashes into the studio.
Lands right in the middle.
And out of the spacecraft. Out of the spacecraft calls out, right in the middle of taping, the spacecraft opens up and a little pink fluff ball alien crawls out of it.
One of the pictures of cuteness.
Yeah. And it's like, people laugh and say, "Aw, ooh," or whatever, and it ends up, they keep rolling with it because, they let the actors think that this was on purpose or something and just keep going. And then they decided to, make this the direction for the show to go in. Except the star of the show, who started the show, really doesn't like it. He doesn't want to change what the show is about.
Because the whole show was based around his like impression of life and stuff, and he wanted to portray that to other people, and that's the part that Bayrod really expected.
Yeah.
But
the director isn't going for it. Who the director or producer or whatever is actually his older brother,
right?
And his producer's like, "No, we're gonna go ahead and do the baby thing, the baby alien. It's a big hit. People love it. They're laughing at it in the studio. This is going to be a big change. We can really up our ratings and be more popular. But
And they're treating it
instead
like it's an
of
animatronic puppet.
yeah,
Sorry.
but
That's your call. Your mother.
after that, after that, the Bayrod, the timeline starts changing because of the show changing, and Bayrod starts changing into a wealthy douchebag who only cares about making
business-minded
profits
man,
and
yeah.
business instead of his usual peace and love self.
Yeah, he's becoming
And
a
that
lot
they
yuppie-ish.
and they start realizing what kind of damage the show being ruined is going to have because of what kind of an impact the show had on it, Bayrod growing up. And if he becomes this business guy, that means he never steals the totem, which means he never becomes
A legend.
a legend, which then will mean that the sisters never becomes a legend as well. And so it just creates a whole. It's going to create a whole domino effect that they don't know what kind of repercussions they're going to have from it. And so it's dire that they get this fixed.
Put it this way, they try to stay away from those kind of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And we don't want to go into too much because previous weeks we've been overly detailing the shows, and we're trying to step back a little bit from that because we spend a lot of time on each individual show. Suffice it to say, it's an excellent episode. It's a more Bayrod-centric episode than they've had in a while, which is great because he's a kind of an underplayed character in the show of late. And, of course, he came in pretty newish when a timeline changed him for Zari. And we hadn't really ever got a whole lot of Bayrod other than being another broski for Steele and a little bit for Ray Palmer before he left. But Bayrod's never had a whole lot of foci on him, and this helped make up for that. And
we're on a little bit of a different thing. I personally wasn't super into this episode, but I'm also not a fan of Bayrod as a character.
But that's just it. Part of the reason is they haven't given us a whole lot to bond with Bayrod. And this episode gave us more, but I'm also not the biggest person on bonding with a primarily just pot-smoking guy, which is all Bayrod ever seems to be to me. So it's still going to take more work to get me really enamored of Bayrod. I like his sister so much better, even though she's the stuck-up socialite.
Yeah, I definitely prefer the original Zari. The new Zari is okay. I'm starting to like her more as she develops. Bayrod has not yet developed at all in a way that I find I can't think of the right
engaging.
Word. But engaging for me,
And at least one thing that came from this episode, though, at the end, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but like I said, this is our spoiler section. We do find that they can now let the old Zari come out and the new Zari go into the totem, so we can split our time between the Zaris. So we can kind of get some time with the old Zari back again, which we'd established the last episode that Steele could visit Zari in the totem at the very end. Well, this time she actually came out for her brother's birthday. And and so we know that we can actually have her out with us. And it kind of showed a great sacrifice for the new Zari to do that. But in some ways, I think she might have wanted the break too.
So the right now for me, the biggest value of Bayrod is his relationships to the characters I like more. You know,
basically
he's a friend for Nathan. He's a brother for Zari. And sometimes that dynamic of Bayrod being a little bit bothered by Nathan dating his sister inside the totem. But not as much as like I don't know. There's that kind of a funny little dynamic there.
To me,
But other than that,
he's mainly, especially after Ray Palmer left, he's for Nathan to still have a bro.
yeah,
Because Nathan lost his main bro when he lost Ray Palmer.
yeah.
And Nathan doesn't work without a bro.
Yeah, I was gonna say Nathan's at his best when he's broing with a friend, you know.
Yeah, and Ray Palmer was his best bro. That guy worked best with
Yeah,
Nathan.
their chemistry was great.
Yeah, and Bayrod is a poor attempted substitution.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of hoping that they come up with another character to be a bro for Nathan, so they can slowly phase out Bayrod.
Me too.
Because he doesn't fit the show's overall ensemble cast as well as other characters could. I mean, I'd almost be more into Mick Rory bonding with Nathan just to get rid of Bayrod, and that just wouldn't work.
No,
It
wouldn't work. But
Rory might smoke a blunt, but that's about it. Otherwise, he doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we're going to go on now to our Tuesday night offerings. Again, Batwoman ended for the season. Plus, we weren't really covering the last few episodes of Batwoman. But now we're on to Wednesday, and we had The Flash and Superman and Lois. Now, in The Flash, we get one of my favorite occurrences in any Flash show. We get time visitors. Because we get daughter Nora and daughter or son Bart Allen from the future. First appearance of Bart Allen, which is the son of Barry Allen, although Bart Allen's in the comic books quite a bit. And Bart Allen shows up.
I like his personality. Bart was a fun character.
He's a devil may care kind of character. He's not as scientifically apt as the rest of the Allen family. Specifically, Barry and Nora are much more trained up in theoretical physics, especially temporal anomaly theoretical physics. Because, of course, look at what they deal with. And he even says, "Hey, I'm only like a freshman. I don't start physics till next year or whatever."
Yeah.
So,
I don't start quantum physics till next semester.
Yeah, don't expect me to know it, sis. That's your job. You get to be the egghead. I get to be the impulsive brother. And he is impulsive.
Yeah.
And
he used the word impulse so many times. I was like, are they going to start calling him Impulse later?
Well, that's his character's name, I think, in the show, even though they never actually name his future character on the show. He's supposed to be Impulse. Which is the younger son of Flash, Barry Allen Flash. Impulse was one of the names Bart Allen went by. So I think that, and the impulsive behavioral aspects, I think, is just meant to hit home that he's Impulse. And Nora, on the other hand, is a little bit more respectable here, but a little bit less than last time we saw her. Last time she was so in awe of Mom and Dad that she mostly did what they said, or went behind their backs, but didn't straight up get in their faces about stuff. Here, she's a little bit more about getting her face and says, "I'm an adult too, and I can make these decisions myself." The last version of Nora would never have done that.
Yeah. Well, also wasn't the previous version of Nora only a teenager, and this one's 26?
Because she said she was 4 years from being 30, so she's 26 this time. So she's like 8 years older than she was. I'm not sure if she was like 18 or what, but she's a good 8 years older, at least 7, 8 years from the last time we really saw Nora. Still same actress. Still good chemistry. Iris comes back, which is neat. Dion is able to stabilize her enough to come back, and she gets to meet her future kids again. Always a
Is it
proud
just
moment.
me? Is it okay? So I really enjoyed these last couple episodes of The Flash, but is it just me or is Iris being? Does it seem like her performances these two episodes have been kind of stilted? You
A
know,
little bit.
she's
And I don't know if it's intentional, like she's supposed to be
it's
hiding something, or if it's just that the actress is just phoning it in right now.
yeah.
Because she's just really just a pretty face on screen lately.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's a deliberate reason behind it, but yeah, her performance as Iris for the last couple episodes have been lacking character, and it's bizarre.
But speaking of
It's kind
character,
of it's weirdly subtle, but it's uncomfortable still.
but speaking of
After all these years of
character,
seeing her,
one of my favorite characters back for a visit because we've got Valdez back as Vibe.
yeah,
Cisco
he
Ramon. I
he
love
he was
Cisco.
gone. He was gone from the show for what, 3 episodes?
Yeah, it didn't last long before he came back. But we get Vibe coming in to save the day. We get a John Wesley Shipp as Jay Garrett in the show, which is nice. Of course, we've mentioned it before. They've mentioned it before. He was the Flash in the '90s short-lived TV series, which means he was that Flash in the Crisis crossover. But he's also been Barry's dad in this series, and he's been Jay Garrick from a couple of different alternative universes. So
Did I ever tell you how I saw the old um 90s Flash series? Only the first couple of episodes. When I was a little kid.
no, I
And
watched
I
it
couldn't
religiously.
I watched him as a little kid, and then I couldn't convince people that there was such a thing as a Flash TV show. For years. For like a decade and a half, I couldn't convince people that there was such a thing as a Flash TV series.
Yeah, I
Not
know, and
until like
it was,
not until the late 2000 aughts, whenever we could look it up during an argument about it.
and it was really good too. One of my favorite things is when John Wesley Shipp was a guest at VisionCon, and I got to come talk to him about it because
Yeah,
that
yeah, it
was
was
one of my
cool.
favorite roles. The other role I mentioned that I think he was a little bit kind of happy that somebody brought it up because a lot of people forget. But he plays Bastion's father in the Neverending Story Part 2 as
Hmm.
well. He's Bastion's father, but a lot of people didn't remember that. But of course, I tend to remember all these little tiny details. Not as much nowadays as I used to.
But
But I
but
was like,
yeah,
yeah, I loved him in that too.
so yeah, this was an interesting episode. They had, the Godspeed War still going on. We find out that the Godspeeds specifically hate Bart. We
They're
don't
his
know
the
why they
Thawne,
hate Bart. Yeah,
but
yeah.
we know
Bart describes him as his thorn.
his arch nemesis,
Yeah.
and that's because they kill somebody he loves, and I'm not going to spoil it enough to say who in this.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
do
So
some spoilers, but we can still leave some tidbits for you to find when you guys get a chance to watch it.
yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, we do find out that they killed someone that Bart loves. We find out who it is, but
Probably one of the
in
most
this
important person in
time from
Bart's
his
life.
timeline.
The most important
Yeah.
person in Bart's life, just like how Barry's mother at the time was his most important person, more
Yeah.
than his bad
I guess
dad, more than
I guess
Iris,
my
more than anybody.
question I think my question then is what drove Godspeed to do that, to do that in the
And
first place, to make
well,
him. And so
hey, we're going into the mind of Godspeed next episode, which, from what I
yes,
was looking at, looks to be the last episode of the season. Because
it's
I did a
this
search.
episode was giving strong finale vibes to it.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I went and did an internet search and asked how many episodes are supposed to be in this season, and it said 16, and this episode was episode 15.
Yeah.
So the next episode should be the last episode. Speaking on that subject matter, I also did a search to find out how many more episodes of Superman and Lois are going to be, and there was originally only supposed to be 13. And this week's episode was episode 12. However, after the show had started, they did manage to squeeze out 2 extra episodes. So we're actually got 3 episodes of Superman and Lois left. So we're getting ready to end several of our series, which is a good thing then that Supergirl's getting ready to come back, Stargirl's getting ready to premiere, Titans is getting ready to come back for another season. Because we're going to need a refresh.
The shows that we've been talking about are ending, and we got more shows on the way very soon.
More shows
next month,
or new seasons. Yes.
Don't forget that we on Disney Plus we're going to be getting the What If series.
That's true.
That'll be interesting in August.
That'll be animated, which I'm not as big into some of the new animated series. I don't talk about them as much. But What If is one I'm really looking forward to because it was one of my favorite comic book runs. But anyway, let's dive into Superman and Lois because, oh God, they gave us such a cliffhanger 3 weeks ago, and then they went on a 2-week hiatus just to slap us in the face. It was so frustrating. We were pulling our hair out.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have that much hair.
I didn't get a haircut. I just pulled this all out.
Right? Because that
cliffhanger.
And I don't have that much to lose in the first place. But
jeez.
Oh my God! But they made it pretty good. First of all, if you remember from 3 weeks ago, Superman agreed to go with Morgan Edge if he spared his family. Because he's right there threatening to kill Lois and the boys right in front of Clark. Clark was in a weakened state from the battle at his Fortress of Solitude, so there's no way he could have stopped him. Unless, of course, the writers wrote it in that way.
Yeah.
But in the most part, there was no way he could have stopped him. And so he agreed to go with Morgan Edge. And they ended the episode with Lois calling John Irons Steel. And saying, yep, Superman has turned. It's just as you said, John. And they pretty much cut the episode at that point. Well, we come back to this episode. First, we figure out that what he'd agreed to with Morgan Edge wasn't just to come back with him, but was allowed his body to be subjugated by a different Kryptonian consciousness.
Yeah.
Like the members of Smallville were getting. But in this case, it was one of the greatest reveals, I think, because the consciousness that was going to be taking over Superman was General Zod. Oh my God.
The Z-Man himself.
One of the original trio of Kryptonian outlaws from the movies. Probably one of the most famous Kryptonian outlaw, General Zod. Very powerful figure in Kryptonian lore. And Superman was going to be the host for Zod, which had been a total freaking personality reversal between Clark Kent and Zod. But he still, even though he agreed to do the switch, he fought it. Boy, he was fighting all the way through. Massive pain. His eyes kept blinking red, on again, off again, on again, off again. He fought it tooth and nail. Lois has contacted John Irons. John Irons comes all loaded for bear. He's going to take Superman out. Lois has to convince John and her father, General Lane, that Superman is still worth saving. John and General Lane have both kind of given up on Clark. General Lane not as much, but John definitely, because of course he remembers his world.
Yeah, John Henry Irons is very firm of, I'm going to kill Superman. And General Lane is like, we'll try to save Superman, but if it doesn't look,
As the father of my
the goods aren't looking
grandkids,
good.
yeah, as the father of my grandkids, and as the hero that he's always been, I would like to save Superman's life and use any weapons we come up against Morgan Edge instead. But if I have to, we're going to take out Superman. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's always been his thing. The military came first in General Lane's mind and his duty. And it took Lois and it took the boys and it took all kinds of situations to get John Henry to change his thoughts on this near the end of the episode. And so
there was we want to mention John Diggle's involvement in this episode.
Oh yeah,
because John Henry Irons came to General Lane with, "I need your help with procuring materials for a weapon I need."
Well, I need this one ammunition made, which is a red solar energy missile.
Yeah,
and he had the ability to shoot it and everything. He just didn't have the missile itself, and so he gives like the specs to General Lane, and General Lane says, "I'll take care of it." Next thing you know, John Diggle's on site because Argus is who they got to develop the missile. Now, they didn't tell Argus they were going to use it to kill Superman. Because Argus never would have helped, and definitely John Diggle would not have personally delivered it. Now, that does mean, because Diggle was in this episode, it means he executively produced this episode, because each of his guest episodes he's executively producing this season throughout the CW verse. And we've still got at least one more special guest starring role coming, which will be his Supergirl walk-on. Because he's already done Batwoman, he's already done Flash, he's already done Legend of Tomorrow, and he's now done Superman and Lois. So he's got one more walk-on role for sure. We don't know if he's going to have any kind of role in Stargirl, but there's a slim possibility. Because we do know that there's going to be some Green Lantern activity in Stargirl this season.
Yeah, well, in the trailer for Stargirl, there's this girl that shows up with the glowing ring or something, and she's like, "I'm the daughter of Green Lantern."
Yes, and I can't remember her name in the comic books, but yes, she is a character from the comic books, and she's being brought in for sure this season, and supposedly so's her brother, but he's not in the preview. But anyway, but that also leaves a perfectly viable way to bring Stargirl into the overarching CW verse by bringing a John Diggle cameo into Stargirl. So who knows? It's all up in the air still. Well, we do know that Stargirl is eventually supposed to be in the same universe.
Right. Eventually. I don't think it's the same Green Lantern. I don't think John Diggle is the Green Lantern of Stargirl, because I think that's the Alan Scott.
Yeah, the Stargirl Green Lantern is the one who's vulnerable to wood, not the color yellow or anything like that. It's wood, so it's the Alan Scott Silver Age Green Lantern. Exactly. But still, because he's the Justice Society Green Lantern, and she's the JSA. The new JSA is basically the Stargirl show. Yeah. That could be its subtitle, the new JSA. Anyway, but there's still the potential for that crossover, even if we're talking about a different Green Lantern. That doesn't preclude Diggle from showing up as he's trying to come to terms with the green ring that he found during Crisis. Because we assume it's a ring, we just know it's a green glow in a box. But we're assuming it's Green Lantern ring, especially when we found that his mother's maiden name was Stewart, or his original name before he was adopted or fostered or whatever was Stewart. I don't remember the exact way of it, but it was mentioned during Crisis that John could have been John Stewart, which is a very famous Green Lantern. We don't want to go into like a lot of details, but this is such an intense episode this season for Superman and Lois. At the end of the episode, John Henry and Superman work together against Morgan Edge and capture him using the Red Solar Missile. Of course, John Henry, for those who don't know, is the superhero known as Steel in the DC comic books. Unlike Nathan from Legends of Tomorrow, that Steel is not the same as this Steel. This Steel actually came about right after the Death of Superman arc in the comic books. When Doomsday killed Superman, 4 other Supermen showed up to replace him in 4 different comic book runs. And one of them was John Henry, who'd been rescued by the real Superman in his life. And he was an engineer, and he created this super suit and this hammer.
Another one was called the Eradicator.
Yeah, one was the Eradicator. One was basically
which
Superboy.
Is the name. And, one was Superboy. The Eradicator is also the name of the machine that Morgan Edge has been using.
Absolutely. So there are hearkening names back to the comic books, but with enough changes made to protect the innocent or the guilty or just to confuse us. But it's amazing how convoluted they're making the series. Now, we do know by Diggle's involvement that my theory was true from what I said in the past couple of weeks. They're kind of ignoring the time lapse of the boys growing up in the CW universe. Because Diggle,
they're just ignoring 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years past like that. Because modern day John Diggle is coming in, even though this Superman should be 15 years ahead of modern day CW verse timelines. So they're just hand washing and hoping nobody notices. But of course, we're nerds. We notice. But I had theorized that they might do that, and it turns out I was right. And that's the gist of this show. Now we know that there's 3 more episodes to come. We know that Morgan Edge is in a jail facility, and the last thing we hear is him in his mind promising his father that he will do his mission and smiling like he's exactly where he meant to be in the first place. So we're not done with Morgan Edge. Plus we have his female assistant who was obviously Kryptonian too. I don't think she's an invaded body. I think she's actually Kryptonian.
I don't know this for sure, but I think that Morgan Edge has somehow merged the Eradicator machinery into himself and has turned himself into the Eradicator.
That could be something of that sort is what we're in store for.
I
just know that
that's my theory. That's my theory.
3 more episodes to round out the season to see how they do that. And of course, that doesn't even preclude the fact that in the 15th episode, they still might leave us with a cliffhanger going into season 2. Because we know there's supposed to be a season 2 of Superman and Lois. So, we'll see. And then, of course, we still got some other CW shows that are still in the works and haven't come out yet. The Canaries hasn't come out yet.
I'm pretty sure that got canceled.
It may or may not have got canceled. John Stewart or John Diggle's Green Lantern may or may not get its own show. They've now set the groundwork for Steel to have his own show. They haven't announced anything completely definite yet. But then we've got the animated Gotham PD thing that's getting ready to come out. So there's a lot going on in the DC television universe that's a little up in the air. And we also don't know how that's going to interact directly and or indirectly with the cinematic universe because, among other things, Ezra Miller's Flash did cross over with our Flash during Crisis. And so there's a perfectly good possibility that our Flash might make a cameo during the Flash movie when it finally comes out.
Yeah.
Even if it's just
it's after 10.
And we
it's after 10 and we haven't gotten Loki and Black Widow.
Okay. So Black Widow is going to be real quick because we're not going to do spoilers this week. It'll be next week before we do spoilers. Loki
Okay.
is probably our most involved thing for this week, and that's because it's the series finale.
Season finale.
And the season finale. And I even have a notepad full of notes on that one.
Ooh.
Yes, because
Okay.
I wanted to remember things from this one. So
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Okay, so Black Widow.
So we'll talk about
Okay.
Black Widow first.
Yeah, I'll try to avoid too many spoilers.
But
I want to say the Black Widow movie was like it's basically what you would want out of a Black Widow movie. It was like a spy film with a lot of action. Very strong, a very strong premise on the ideas of what is a family.
The concept of the movie, I think, a lot of people weren't sure exactly what it was going to do. I mean, it had pretty much leaked that it happened sometime around Civil War, but part of the movie is dedicated to flashbacks of her origin story, which we expected.
Yes.
But the big major part of it happens almost directly after the big Civil War battle in the Civil War.
Yes.
And then it goes all the way up to right before Infinity Wars.
Actually, it goes all the way up to the mid-credits. There's a post-credit scene that's
I'm
after
not talking
Endgame.
about it. I know, I wasn't talking about that. That's separate.
Okay.
But the actual movie goes right up to just about the start of Infinity Wars.
Not quite, but it does.
Just about. That's the time frame of the movie to give people a handle on when it takes place.
Yeah, it takes place. The meat of the movie takes place immediately, and actually, more accurately, it takes place after the end of Civil War, but before the after-credits scene of Civil War.
Yeah, it pretty much is just about right after the war itself.
Because if you remember in the Civil War movie, at the end credit scene, it cuts to there's this clip of Captain America coming to the raft to rescue the other Avengers that have been arrested.
Right.
And this Black Widow movie takes place in between the War of the Civil War and before rescuing the arrested Avengers from the raft.
Right. Because this basically happens, it starts like a couple of days after the Civil War events. Like, it's starting with in Civil War when Natasha decides to let Steve go instead of capturing him at the end of the battle. And Iron Man accusing her of doing it without being able to totally prove it.
Yeah, and then she goes out on the run. Yeah, and she's on the run.
In one of the first scenes of the movie, this isn't really a heavy spoiler, she's running from General Ross, who we know is one of the main enforcers of the Sokovia Accords. And so she's now in violation of the Accords, especially since she was one of the ones that had signed the Accords. Unlike Steve Rogers and them, who didn't even sign, she signed but went back on it because she believed in Steve Rogers. And this is where that puts her on the run. And we get to meet one of her main contacts for safe houses in a year. We get to meet her extended quote-unquote family, including Red Guardian and her sister, who's one of the most deadly assassins in the entire world, and who we theorize might be the new Black Widow 2, going into the next phase of Marvel. We meet her mother, quote unquote, Melina. We meet the Widows, which is the program that she was a part of to basically make her a super assassin agent. and meet the guy that's in charge of the widows, and we meet Taskmaster.
Yeah.
Probably one of the
No.
more anticipated villains in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to give away specifically much about Taskmaster.
Right, because there's a big
I will.
spoiler there.
Yeah, there's a big spoiler there about Taskmaster, but it's the most controversial point of the movie because the Taskmaster you get in this movie isn't quite the same as what you're accustomed to in the
Right,
comics.
and you're trying really hard not to use that a couple of keywords that would say why it's different. And I know
Yeah,
exactly what you're talking about, and I totally agree. We don't want to spoil that till next week.
yeah,
But if you want to hear the spoiler, guys, clue in next week when we'll be doing the
yeah.
actual spoilers for Black
What
Widow,
what
and
what
we'll
I
go
do want
into
to
it.
say what I do want to say is how Taskmaster was used in this film fits really well along with within the story that we are getting in this movie.
Yeah, it
Um,
does fit. Where he goes does fit.
yeah,
And I maybe
and
misspoke there, but I'm not going to go back and correct because it'll give a clue.
yeah,
But
and then also it does leave room for a more comic, accurate uh, example for the Taskmaster in future films.
right, it
But
does.
as long as you're not bothered too much by that change in how Taskmaster gets handled in this film, Taskmaster is still a very dangerous threat, and kind of a plot piece for how things go that
It's
serves the story, I think, well, and
well,
did a
well.
very anyway.
I think a key point here is Taskmaster still has the primary ability that Taskmaster is known for, which is the ability to observe somebody and basically just
Yeah,
by observation copy their combat style.
yeah, yes,
He doesn't
and
have to
I do
doesn't
think
have to train or anything. Just one viewing, and they can pick up their combat style, similar to one of the characters from Heroes, who could watch something
yeah,
done on TV and then instantly replicate it.
yeah, yeah, exactly like that. And so Taskmaster is definitely a force to be reckoned with. Now I think we can mention this: the widows that Black Widow and Yelena and them they're fighting that they're up against.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think we can say this much that there's a mind control plot going on here too,
Yeah, we won't
and
go
that's
into
part of
too
what's
much
making
depth.
them a problem. Yeah,
We won't go into too much depth because there's a lot of things we can say about this mind control, but there is a mind
yeah,
control element. And of course, that was a key point in some of the comics and stuff too. So that's not a real big
hmm
surprise. Okay, and
yeah.
I think we're going to leave Black Widow there for now because one, we're
Okay,
running over in time, and two, we're going to hit the heavy spoilers next week.
okay.
And it's just so tempting to let out a spoiler.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I just want to say, really fun spy action film. That is kind of the perfect send off for Natasha Romanoff.
personally, I would have normally waited a month to see it when it went free because I don't like to pay for premiere access, and I didn't go to
Yeah.
the theater. But then I was crunching the numbers, and I figured I'm going to watch it, Allison's going to watch it, and the 16-year-old was going to watch it. It's going to cost us $11 a piece to watch it. That's the $30 right there if we went to the movie
Mm,
theater. So I was
yeah.
like, might as well get it this time. But for the most part, I'm against the whole premiere access thing. And if I
As long
if
as you have 3 or 4 people watching it, then you could think of it as getting your money's worth out of it.
well, I also looked at the
Um.
premiere access, and under the guidelines, the way they word it say once you buy the movie, you now have access to that movie the entire time you're a subscriber to Disney Plus. So even when it goes off Disney Plus, like it rotates out, you should still have access to that movie because you paid premiere access for it.
Oh,
from what I
yeah,
understand.
you should.
By the
You
wording
should.
in the contract, in the rules,
Yeah.
it should. And that was one of my deciding factors. Because, I didn't want to watch it and find out I had like 72 hours to watch it and then lost
Yeah,
it.
no.
Or I
Yeah,
could only watch it for a month and that was it. And
yeah.
no, we've got it supposedly as long as we keep up our subscription to Disney Plus. Now that doesn't mean that if we let our subscription last and bring it back that we'll still have it. That's kind of up in the air. But
Yeah.
by the wording, we at least have it as long as we keep up our Disney Plus subscription. So that's
Yeah.
consideration. But I still am against the whole Premier Access thing when HBO does it for free. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're going to go into Loki now, and I've got a bunch of notes on Loki. So
Okay.
let me start. Let's start with
Spoiler alert. Loki dies.
Oh, yeah.
Which one, though?
Right? There was a whole bunch. They had spares at the end.
Okay.
They had lots
I
of
saw
spares
that.
at the end.
I saw that on a thread somewhere. Someone was like, I can't wait for to watch Loki after work. And someone commented on it saying, Loki dies. And they replied with, which one? And then the person that tried to spoil it went, touche.
Anyway, one of the big theories we had last week, and I even found Nerdist was running the same theory as you. They were thinking that the end guy was going to end up being another Loki. It did not turn. Now, here's the big thing of this episode. They never actually name the guy at the end. However, there are some allusions to who it is, and I'm going to cover those right now, right off the bat. Okay. I believe that the end guy is Kang the Conqueror.
Yes.
And here's why. I mean, number one, I believe he's the actor that they said was going to be playing Kang. I didn't double check, but I believe
double check.
I didn't because I wanted it to just be my illusions. But he did mention in his montage of things he'd been called, he had said he'd been called a conqueror, which pointed right at Kang the Conqueror for me. And then the other great big one that links to the comic books was he said that versions of him that were scientists who discovered the multiversal phenomena were from the 31st century. And in the comic books, the Kang that first appeared was from the 31st century.
Yes.
So those two allusions to me pretty much puts a freaking bullseye on his back saying, this is Kang the Conqueror. And that's not to even mention what happens in the end credit tidbits.
And also his outfit, while he wasn't an exact replica of Kang the Conqueror, his outfit did resemble King the Conqueror's purple, loose-fitting outfit.
It was very reminiscent.
Yeah, very reminiscent of.
And then in credit tidbits, we see a few things that were of note, and some of them kind of point to the Conqueror too.
Yeah. Now there's a few. I'm not an expert in King the Conqueror, but I've read a number of stories that involved King the Conqueror from other things, right? And if memory serves me right, there was a point in time where King the Conqueror lived on past the end of time and lived for eons and eons, and became bored and lonely and traveled back to time to like ancient Egypt to rule as a pharaoh. Because then he had people. Yeah, that's one of the versions from the comics. And that's something else is in the comics, there's a lot of different versions of King. I have seen Kang fighting Kang and helping the heroes defeat Kang.
Well, Kang was one of the driving forces that developed the Young Avengers. It was a version of Kang that helped form the team, the Young Avengers, among other things. So Kang has been involved all through the timeline of the Marvel Universe. And that's what makes him such a highly anticipated character. And, I mean, how do you top Thanos? Well, Kang the Conqueror is a good one. Because of the fact that he intermingles with a lot of different stories. And they had to because they were going to bring him in for the next Ant-Man movie. It's
Yeah.
theorized. Because another thing that a lot of people they point out, like Nerdist did and stuff on the internet, is that when they were first coming up to the castle at the end of episode 5, the castle was this almost a spitting image of Kang's castle, as kind of hinted at in the Ant-Man view of the microverse.
Yeah.
And if you look at the waves of energy surrounding the castle, it almost looks like you're looking out at the microverse in the void,
Yeah.
which puts him clearly within the microverse when he's sitting there just waiting for stuff to happen. Now, also in the end credit tidbits, a couple of other things were telling. The little talking clock changes from being a yellow friendly clock to a menacing red colored clock.
Yeah.
Red is very menacing color, especially in comic books.
Yeah.
There's a memorandum that you see on one of the desks. It's entitled Hunters and Analysts Working Together, which looks much more adversarial than all the previous versions of the memorandums we've seen. And then there's just one more thing from the end credits. This isn't part of the Kang the Conqueror necessarily, but there is a snapshot of Loki on his file, but this time it's more of a mug shot in like gray prison garb with the TVA stamped on it. And in other times he's been like wearing his office suit or the red or the yellowish jumpsuit that he was arrested in originally. But here it's more like a gray prison outfit, kind of something more utilitarian, like Kang would have institutionalized somebody in. What else was in this episode? Not necessarily Kang related. Oh yeah, the TVA agents and the analysts seem to have lost most of their memory of Loki's timeline.
Yeah. So now that we're in the full spoilers for the Loki show,
oh, we've been in deep spoilers since we started.
Okay, yeah. So here's something I think about the Kang the Conqueror thing. Something that's good to think about is how, he mentions how he's been called many names, and Kang the Conqueror has been called many different names at different eras and different times and different versions of himself. Sometimes he's Nathaniel Richards. Sometimes he's like Kumar Todd or something like that. I can't get his Egyptian name right. And this guy we got, who they refer to as the man he who remains.
Yes.
He's like, what's the point in a name? In my name. He doesn't give up his actual name. He just talks about how he's been called a lot of different names. And he tells them, we have a couple of choices here. Either you kill me, and he gives this whole little story about how there's a whole bunch of other versions of him from the 31st century who all discover multiversal travel, and they intermingle with each other, and they share technologies and stuff. But some of them are nice, some of them not so nice, and it created a multiversal war.
Right.
Yeah. And so he's cut it down to where he's the only one of him. So there's no multiversal war, no insane chaos that can potentially destroy all of existence. But he's like, you kill me, then when we get to the 31st century, there'll be a whole bunch of me's again, and the whole wars will start over again as the multiverse explodes.
But that may not be the case, because the way that it ends, it's more like instead of a whole new, war going on again, it looks like just a different version of Kang won the war, because a lot of it in the TVA looks like there's a final individual Kang again in charge of the TVA.
Right. And so, yeah. Oh, it cuts back like Loki. Well, Sylvie knocks Loki through a time portal to send him to the past back to the TVA, where she presumably she then kills
this Kang,
or he who remains. Yeah, right. And then after he's stabbed, he's like, see you later. I'll see you soon. As he dies.
Yes.
And then Loki is panicked and he's running around the TVA looking for Mobius. And he finds him and he runs up to Mobius. He's like, Mobius, quick! There's this guy. He exists in a time. We got to mobilize. We got to go to war. There's a multiversal war. Everything's going to go to chaos. Blah blah blah. And he's like, and Mobius is like, well, what would an analyst do? And he's like, what? He's like, you're an analyst, right? What would an analyst do? He's like, and you realize Mobius does not recognize Loki, or at least this Mobius doesn't, because none of the TVA people recognize this Loki. And then Loki goes over and he sees it's a real Planet of the Apes type of moment. He sees the statue of the Timekeeper, only now it's Kang face.
Yeah, no more. That was going to be my next thing. Is the TVA is no longer got a 3 Timekeeper statue. It's got a single statue, but this time it's of Kang. And if you look at the suit that the statue's wearing, it is exactly in the shape of the traditional Kang the Conqueror outfit.
Yeah.
So
I think we're dealing with. It could be a couple things. I think the multiversal break is now. There's more than one TVA.
There could be.
And
I do know
and
that
he's
Mobius and 15 are asking each other what, quote unquote, he wants them to do. Assuming that means at least one version of Kang that's in charge of them. So he's a little bit more hands-on than us. Now, also, a lot of people don't realize, but in the comic books, there's a portion of the comic books where Kang had a wife, and his wife was Ramona, the judge.
Yeah, Ravonna Renslayer, the judge from the TVA.
And the last we saw of her, she slipped out in front of Mobius into a time door, and we don't see anything from her. We see a version of her because 15 takes some of the members of the TVA to where she was before she became a full variant, and she's a teacher in a school, and they use that to prove to them that they're variants and not just created by the Timekeepers. This is before everything changes. This all leads everyone to believe that in this go round, a much more conquest savvy Kang took over at least this version of the TVA and using it more as a weapon, not just as a set of checks and balances. Much more militarist, much more of an army force instead of a police force. And even though the timeline has changed, we know that there are still major upheavals going on, which means Loki and potentially Sylvie are still affecting this current new timeline variance, because as we walk up to 15 and Mobius, they're talking about there's at least 23 new timelines that just spawned just now. So they're still breaking away and making new variants. So
I want to mention the graph that we get. Like, they freak out if like a line is getting close to the red line, but now they're looking at the graph and it's nothing but just
it's
Nexus
red.
events going all over it. It looks like veins in a blood vessels or something. Many red.
Or a fractal display. Yeah, it looks like a fractal progressive display.
And they're all going. They're going so far past the red line. They're beyond the edge of the screen.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking intense.
So I'm sure Doctor Strange is somewhere going, "What the hell did you do?"
And then, of course, there's no after credit ending scene or anything. The closest that we get is a stamp on a final memorandum that says to be continued in season 2. So we know
Loki will return in season 2.
Season 2, and that we will not figure out any of this shit until other movies and stuff that touch on it, and then season 2.
Yeah.
Because we know of at least 2 movies that might still, possibly 3 that might still touch on this. We've got Spider-Man No Way Home is going to touch some multiversal stuff. So it might
That's the
touch
rumor.
something.
That's the rumor. There's nothing confirmed on that, I don't think. But
The Ant-Man new movie is supposed to have Kang the Conqueror in it.
yes, yeah, King the
That's a
Conqueror has been
pretty
cast
solid
for
rumor.
that. Yeah, Quantum Mania.
And then we've got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which might touch on it because it touches on the other two movies as well as WandaVision. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff building up. I still got to say, we've given him respect before, and it just got to give another nod of respect to Kevin Feige because he has built the most convoluted puzzle of shows and movies out there. Mainly, the movies were the main thing. Before, the shows weren't touching on it as much as they could, but ever since the Disney Plus shows, they are directly influencing the movie timelines and vice versa.
Yeah.
So Kevin Feige has woven a tapestry for us that, I mean, I'm on pins and needles waiting to see the next installment of what happens. Like, I want to see when Julie Louis-Dreyfus shows back up as Lady Hydra. I want to see where they go with that. We do know that, you know, and we're touching on a little bit of Black Widow here from the in credit scene. We want to see how she's going to be effective in the Hawkeye TV series because there's a pretty big bullseye put on Hawkeye's back by the Madam Hydra.
Yeah.
And stuff. But there's so many convoluted webs being woven that Feige's like a giant spider in the middle of these webs just pulling on strings and making these new shows to label these strings.
Oh, man.
I
Ultron
can't
would
wait
be
to see them.
pissed.
Oh, no shit.
I mean, these strings.
And then we still have other questions up in the air. Like, for
man.
instance, in Mobius, in Morbius, the living vampire, we know that Michael Keaton's supposed to show up, and it's presumed to be that he's this Vulture character from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which means that it'll link the Spider-Man verse of Sony with the Marvel Cinematic Verse in a way, because Mobius is supposed to be a bridge. Mobius is supposed to directly be in the same world. Morbius, I know, I do that.
Yeah.
Morbius is supposed to be a direct connection to the Venom aspect of the Spider-Verse and not originally part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, unlike Spider-Man, who can kind of bridge both. However, if you now bring Vulture in, they might be blending together, and the walls between the multiverse are thinning. You know? What was it they used to call that in one of the TV shows? It was as a thinny. Oh, and in Haven, if you ever watched Haven, a thinny is being involved, and that's that little thin area between worlds that you can sometimes pass through into another dimension. Well, the walls between the multiverse are thinning, and Kevin Feige's just backing his web, laughing his ass off at us as we're being drawn in like freaking druggies to the drug dealer.
I want to draw some attention to, I forget his name now. It's like Jacob Masterson or something like that. The actor who was playing as King. He basically got like a 20-minute monologue in this episode, and he really delivered on that. You know, he was a very fascinating character. Yeah,
he made it worth it. He did.
He was fun to watch as he monologued at the Lokis, and you know what's great is, like, you know, he's going to have to be a strong character because I think the other versions we're going to see of him are going to be drastically different people. You know, but this guy, This guy's been living for eons by himself. He's gotten a little kooky.
I think we're about to see my kitty do his parrot impression by jumping up on my shoulder.
Oh yeah,
He's leaning on it now, if you can see, but
yeah, I can see.
he has a tendency to like jump fully on his shoulder and ride it like a parrot or something. He's like, Daddy.
The kitty that we've got here likes to rest behind my head on the couch here.
This is the Vriska that Allison mentioned on your post. Vriska be like, yeah, everything's changing around here, man.
So, man, yeah, I think my favorite episode was episode 5, but this episode 6 was just fantastic as well.
Oh my god!
And we have a lot of unanswered questions.
They set us up for season 2 so bad. We're going to be pulling our hair out like we were for Superman and Lois. I'm like, come on, we gotta see.
This is now I'll say this is the first of the Disney Plus Marvel shows that we've officially got confirmation that there's going to be a season 2.
Yes, it's the first one that has left us in a definite cliffhanger.
Definite cliffhanger. Well,
that won't be resolved in a movie.
And it specifically says that we'll be, returning in a second season. So
right, where like the sort of cliffhanger that we get at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier is the kind that can get resolved in the movies or in another show. You don't necessarily have to have another Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Although he's no longer the Falcon, he's now Cap. See, there we go. I've got a parrot.
So yeah.
He loves me, and I'm his favorite person, and he just loves to do this. He's like, Daddy, come on, give me attention. You don't care about that computer show. You care about loving me. That's all that matters. Don't you understand?
So,
why would you worry about that show when you could be petting me? I allow you to do that. You should be glad. But anyway, we're going to call it here because we're over in time, which we expected this week. We did because we had a lot to go over.
Yeah.
Next week, we will get into our more heavily spoiler-influenced Black Widow episode. We will have what should be the season finale for Flash. We will have another episode of Superman and Lois and another episode of Legends of Tomorrow. We're not quite ready for Stargirl to come out yet, or What If. However, Space Jams comes out on the 16th.
You know something I was thinking about? It's really fascinating to me that the next thing to release after this finale we got from Loki, where they're like, there's now a multiverse, is a What If series, where every episode is like, what if things went differently? So I'm thinking,
multiverses.
That's what I'm saying. Is like these aren't just what if stories. These are other universes. These are parts of the multiverse
that the Watcher watches. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's actually the perfect build up to it.
Yeah, the ending of Loki is the perfect build up to the What If show.
It is, and that's why it's a perfect timing for them to set it as the next Marvel show. I kind of wish that What If was done live action, just because I prefer the live action shows.
Yeah,
the cartoons are great. They just recently put a Guardian of the Galaxy cartoon on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't gotten around to watching it, but I saw some clips. It looks pretty good.
I watched the first episode, but I haven't watched anything else. But it is looking really, really good. And so we're going to hit on some of these things, like we said, next week. You can find me right now, as if you log into my channel when I'm not there now, you'll see the new trailer says that this is the only scheduled show I'm doing every week. Everything else will be unscheduled because of my health. I'm trying to catch up more with my sleep and everything. So if I do any gaming and stream it, it won't be scheduled. It'll be more of a spur of the moment thing. but I'm not sticking to a schedule right now just because it's easier for me to sleep when I'm able to sleep. Um,
Yeah.
my health has deteriorated a little bit as far as that goes. But this is my channel, the Gamer Seuss channel, which is, of course, also dedicated to Extra Life, part of the Children's Miracle Network. And as always, to Eclectic Endeavors, part of the Springfield Regional Art Council, with the dedicated mission of furthering the educational side of the nerdy hobbies and pastimes. My co-hosts, of course, Greg Pullman, who already left us for the day, director of tabletop gaming for Eclectic Endeavors, who you'll see live at Holdfast Brewing Company next Wednesday instead of here. So next week it'll just be me and Lurch. But you can catch him on Queen City Cardboard on Twitch TV, and he usually broadcasts, if he does, on Thursdays right now. I know that we're all kind of taking little bits of breaks because of things that are happening in real life, but I think he still plans to do a little bit tomorrow on his show, a couple hours of playing one of his games, but he's not broadcasting as much as he used to right now because of things going on. But most of us are going to try to get back to some kind of schedule soon, but every once in a while you need to take a break for one reason or another. And then my co-host, which is still with me here, Lurch, Philip Landergan, our chairman of Eclectic Endeavors. He's the big head honcho, what's in charge, and also still pretty much the interim electronic gaming director until he gets an actual official replacement, which won't happen until we have an official con again.
Well, I mean, the
got something
chairman
kinda-
also expected to be a director of an area still too.
Especially any area that's not covered, you ends up covered by you anyway, or one of us ends up having to do double and triple duty. So, like, we don't have a vice chairman right now, so kind of, sort of, me and Greg are stepping into that to help Lurch out. We're working on some information, hopefully, about a possible picnic. We'll update people about that as soon as we have some more definite information. We're going to be talking to the directors here soon about it. But you can catch Lurch when he's not on break, because they're currently kind of on a break too. But his Twitch channel is Left Claw Studios. He's also same thing on YouTube, and you can also reach all of us on Facebook, Gamer Seuss.
We currently have on the Left Claw Studios YouTube page over 200 videos that people could find on there and watch. And I'm planning on restarting up streaming on live on a regular basis starting next week. There might be a slight modification to the schedule as I get started up.
But these happen.
Working that out with Angel, but I'm planning on restarting at least some streaming next week.
Yeah, we will update our schedules as we can. Also, speaking of YouTube, if you've missed any episodes of Game Time with me, Lurch, and Greg, most of the episodes are available on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, just type in Gamer Seuss, do a search. That'll bring you to the Gamer Seuss YouTube channel. And go to my Game Time playlist. And I have every possible Game Time that I could transfer over. I think a couple of the really earliest ones may not have made it over there, but we've got several videos of Game Time over there on YouTube that you can watch to catch up on some of our previous episodes. If you really like this show, remember to subscribe, follow, tell your friends about it, tell them about the YouTube. If you don't come to the live show, come to YouTube, and keep an ear open for our other events, live events, as hopefully we get more and more of COVID tackled to where we can start doing real things again. We're working on the picnic. We eventually do want to get back to doing the Gaming Arts Media Entertainment Expo. We'd like to do game days at the Creamery again. All of those are in the future, and so just keep an ear open, and we will try to keep you updated on this site as well. Also, as we talked about during this episode, we are working on some one-shot adventures eventually that we can possibly broadcast on the show, similar to like Critical Role and Acquisitions Incorporated, but doing one-shots and stuff like the Avatar: The Last Airbender game, the Mask game that he talked about, that Avatar was extremely influenced by. A couple weeks ago, I talked about a Wizard of Oz campaign setting for 5th
If I
edition
remember
D&D.
correctly, Greg said that the Avatar game is being made by the same people who made the Mask game,
Yeah,
right?
and heavily influenced
Yeah.
by their mechanics. Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm talking about possibly doing a one or so shot in the Wizard of Oz world
Mhm.
of Brahm. That it came out as its new campaign setting. I got the quick start rules for. So keep an ear out for that. When we start scheduling some of that, we'll let people know. We also have another Twitch channel that's not currently active, but we're working on getting more stuff active on it. We haven't as of yet scheduled anything, but we do have the Springfield Game Expo channel on Twitch, which is the official channel for Eclectic Endeavors and Game. And in the future, we're hoping to move some of our programming to where it's simultaneously cast on one channel and then that channel as well, plus having some original programming specifically just for that channel. So keep your ears out on that. I think on behalf of myself, Lurch, and Greg, who's already gone, we want to wish you a wonderful week. If you haven't watched some of the shows we've recommended yet, go out and find them. Lawnmower Man is available on Tubi. Tomorrow Wars and Leverage Redemption is available on Amazon Prime. The Librarian, I think we said, was on Netflix right now. There's a lot of different shows you can do. Keep your ears out, and we'll keep you informed as best we can. And we'll catch everybody next week here. I want to say thank you on my behalf, and I assume Lurch is going to say the same.
Yeah.
And we'll let you go.
Thank you. See you guys later.
All right. Bye-bye now, guys.
Thanks for watching.
Mm-hmm.